It was brought to my attention recently that it's been over a year since my last Joshi Pro Res vid, which frankly is an appalling state of affairs that needs fixing immediately. I'm also yet to really deliver on a video about someone who has been requested, well, ever since I started doing wrestling videos. So I should rectify both of these things, and what better way to do that than by covering one of the best periods of wrestling that there has ever been. We're going back to All Japan Women, and the theme of this set of videos, for yes there's going to be more than one, is the battle for the company's top title, the WWWA or 3WA World Championship, or as it's often known, the Red Belt. We're covering a period between March 1995 and December 1996, and we're looking at it from two different perspectives. What with all the epic matches that we're about to cover, this whole thing's going to have to be split up into 4 parts. As for the two perspectives, we're going to start by largely centering around perhaps the greatest women's feud of them all, Aja Kong versus Manami Toyota. And then, on the other side, we'll focus on Kyoko Inoue's rise to the top. And the main theme is largely going to be covering great matches. I've picked out 16 of them, and the standard here is simply ridiculous. And so, well, we shouldn't waste any more time. For those of you who've long wanted a Manami Toyota centric video, well, you've got your wish at last. Most of my Joshi vids have centred around big shows and feuds and the like, as opposed to this title. It did feature a fair bit in the Monster Ripper vid, but a little primer is perhaps needed seeing as this is the most prized belt in the history of women's wrestling. The Red Belt's history goes all the way back to 1954 and to Mildred Burke. When she broke off from the NWA and was sabotaged by Billy Wolfe, Burke set up the World Women's Wrestling Association, recognising herself as Women's World Champion up until her retirement in 1956. Now this might sound like a cocky thing to do, but it's a totally legit claim seeing as she was screwed over by Wolfe, her former manager and partner, in her NWA World title loss to June Byers. Billy Wolfe being a bastard aside, Burke's tour of Japan in 1954 is often recognised as the beginnings of Joshi Pro Res. Although there was women's wrestling in Japan before then, Burke's tour did more to formalise it, becoming part of a wave that sees the arrival of Pro Res as a whole, 1954 also being the same year Rikidozan had his huge and rather shooty rivalry with judoka Masahiko Kimura. Although it took a little while longer for a promotion to really come and take control of Joshi. While the 3WA belt became inactive following Burke's retirement in 56, it was acquired by the nascent All Japan Women in 1970 when Eiko Kyo defeated Marie Vagnon for the title on October 15th. From there it would be the company's top belt all the way up to its dissolution in 2006. Fast forwarding then all the way to 1994, we have an utterly dominant champion, the biggest badass, the unquestioned top dog, the final boss, the Jungle Emperor, Aja Kong. I would say that the Red Belt really takes on a special status in the 90s due to not just one, but 2 long and dominant reigns that occurred back to back, and really help make it a big symbol, something prestigious that's exceptionally hard to get. Before Aja Kong, there was Bull Nakano, who won the belt at the start of 1990 and would not let it go for nearly 3 years, breaking all other records along the way. The previously lengthy single reigns of Jackie Sato and Jaguar Yokota, 637 and 801 days respectively, end up dwarfed by the 1057 days that Bull held the title for. As we get further into that reign, Aja Kong would begin to pursue Bull Nakano, challenging her for the title, feuding against her in a story that had roots all the way back to her initial beginnings, when she was still wrestling under her real name of Erika Shishido and was a part of the Atrocious Alliance, in the wings while Bull Nakano and Dump Matsumoto took centre stage. Finally, on the 26th of November 1992, at Dream Rush, after falling short a couple of times previously, Aja Kong was finally able to defeat Bull Nakano and become the top dog. She seals the deal in the end with Bull's own favoured move, the guillotine leg drop, and the post-match is pretty emotional stuff, Bull showing respect and shedding tears with the new champ. It is funny, really. In some ways, despite being arguably the greatest dominant monster in the history of wrestling, Aja Kong didn't really want to be that. When she was younger and going through the dojo, she said that she wanted to be on the face side. By all accounts, the daughter of King Kon and Erika Shishido couldn't be more different from each other. Erika had a tough childhood, raised only by her mother after her father, an African-American soldier, left when she was 5. She was interviewed by CGTN in 2016 for a feature about identity, talking about her upbringing and how difficult it was, being the only mixed-race child around, ostracised and discriminated against by everyone. Wrestling was one of the few places where she found some kind of escape, and she was accepted into the AJW dojo, trained by Jaguri Yokota, making her debut in 1986. But when she said that she wanted to be the hero, the people in charge said that wasn't possible because she was black, that she was a natural villain, that she should use her jealousy over not really being Japanese as a weapon. Now, as much as Aja Kong initially hated this turn of events and almost felt like giving up, she grew to embrace the character, and she would channel it to take her all the way to the top. And at the end of 1994, that's where she most certainly is, one of the best wrestlers in the world, roared on, loved by the crowd. Manami Toyota's wrestling story started in 1987, when she was one of thousands who applied to join AJW's dojo in the wake of the huge success of the Crush Gals, although her favourites were the Jumping Bomb Angels, and she credited them with inspiring her to become a wrestler. This would go even further in the dojo, where she was trained and mentored by one half of the Angels, that being Itsuki Yamazaki. Manami was, by all accounts, very shy personally, not someone who liked to talk to anyone, especially not before she entered the dojo. But when the bell rang, well, that would change everything. She quickly gained recognition for how blazing fast she was, her devil-may-care style that would give her the nickname of the Flying Angel. She really broke through in 1990 following her victory in the Grand Prix tournament, followed by a blazing feud with fellow 1987 graduate Toshio Yamada that ultimately led to a classic hair versus hair match, after which the two actually became tag partners. Indeed, on the same night that Aja Kong won the red belt, Toyota and Yamada headlined the Dream Rush with their interpromotional tag match against JWP's top team, Dynamite Kansai and Mayumi Yazaki. There would be more singles honours, winning other singles belts like the AJW Championship and the All Pacific title twice, and there's already been a few big matches against Aja Kong, although Toyota has yet to defeat her. There's the final of the 1992 Grand Prix, where Kong came out on top. On the 20th of November 1994, the Big Egg Universe at the Tokyo Dome, the biggest show in women's wrestling history, they faced each other in the first round of the V-Top tournament and completely stole the whole card. While Aja Kong's 3-match performance that night is one of wrestling's greatest achievements, the match with Toyota was the best of the trio. Even by their high standards, they just bring out something in each other. And that's something we'll explore further as we head into a defining year for both of them. The first match that we're covering then happens on March 26, 1995, the main event of one of the company's biggest annual shows, Wrestling Queendom, at the Yokohama Arena in Kanagawa, in front of 9,000 people, the same place where Zenjo held the legendary Dream Slam in 1993, almost 2 years to the day previously. People were pretty eager for Toyota and Kong to meet again following their Dome Classic, and it's not long before they get their wish. Manami Toyota earns the title shot on February 15th in a tag match where whoever scores the win in full gets the opportunity. Teaming with Yumiko Hotta against Kyoko and Takako Inoue, Toyota ends up pinning Kyoko to secure the title shot. It's a match with a pretty interesting dynamic considering what's up for grabs, one where the double Inoues are much more established as a top tag team, and it definitely shows. However, despite having clear differences, Toyota and Hotta are able to combine their individual talents in order to score a victory. In the end, it happens while Hotta's out of commission on the outside. Now, the attendance of 9,000 for Wrestling Queendom was, admittedly, a little disappointing for AJW when you consider that the aforementioned Dream Slam packed the arena out with 16,500 attending. Still, this is not an interpromotional show. Wrestling Queendom is a bit more of an experiment in this regard, to see how they fare without working alongside JWP, LLPW and FMW. Also, there's no Akira Hokuto match, which does hurt matters. The Dangerous Queen, Zenjo's most popular wrestler, hasn't wrestled in AJW since winning the V-Top tournament at the Big Egg, supposedly saving herself for the company's return to the Dome later in the year, although she does make an appearance on the show, hyping up the encounter she's going to have with Bull Nakano next month at the big WCW New Japan North Korea event. While Wrestling Queendom is a stacked card in all other areas, the lack of an Akira Hokuto match does undoubtedly hurt the attendance. Still, this ends up being a pretty damn good card, and it's going to be capped off with a belter of a main event. Hokuto herself is on guest commentary for the match, and there's definite glares exchanged between her and Toyota as the combatants make their way to the ring. Just as in their Big Egg Universe match, Kong and Toyota set a fast pace from the off. Aja immediately hits a backdrop driver and goes for a superplex, but Toyota pushes her off and hits a missile dropkick to the back. Aja counters right back off the ropes and hits the inverted Oklahoma Stampede, followed by a body attack. It's blinding stuff. From there though, Aja gradually takes control. Toyota tries to scream her way out of Aja's brutal kicks, but she soon gets knocked down, and we get what you'd perhaps think would happen next. It's the dominant champion against an underdog. Aja begins a vicious attack centered around Toyota's back, looking to immobilize the challenger, and seriously, Toyota may be flexible, but Kong will test that to a ridiculous degree. It's certainly loud action too. The commentators may struggle to be heard a little over all the screaming and panting that Toyota's doing. There's no real way to say that without making it sound a little lewd, but that's the Aja and Toyota dynamic. Aja is the daughter of King Kong, and Manami Toyota is her Fei Rei, her scream queen. Toyota gets almost no offense in for the next 5 to 10 minutes as, in between some of the most sadistic looking stretches you will ever see in a ring, Aja runs through her extensive arsenal: headbutts, chops, slaps, brainbuster, a stalling pile driver. It's utterly laser focused, and this is starting to look more like a mismatch. When Kong hits a double arm suplex and goes straight into a Boston Crab that makes the Lion Tamer look like a comfy weekend at a spa retreat, that's when you realise just what sort of level this champion operates on. Aja hits not one, but 2 powerbombs, drapes Toyota over the rope and hits a drop kick, another pile driver, followed by the Aja bomb package pile driver. But somehow Toyota is still there, defiant, shouting that she's not going to give up. Toyota gradually gets hope. She's able to counter another body attack attempt with the Manami roll, but even then she's still got a ways to go, hit by a front suplex and a splash from the second rope. Again though, a defiant and thoroughly loud bridge out signals that despite everything, Aja still has a ways to go to beat Toyota. Still, while Toyota slowly gets more flecks of hope, the desperation in them means they can still go wrong. A first attempt at a rolling cradle doesn't work out, and while Toyota's able to push Aja off from another superplex attempt, a body press wasn't the best idea. She gets pancaked. Aja makes a point of signalling to Hokuto, almost as if to say that this could be you next, before attempting a suplex. However, Toyota reverses and she's able to execute the rolling cradle, sending Kong all over the ring. It's not enough for a pin, but it shows Toyota's still there and able to severely discombobulate the monster. Kong gets out of the way of an attempted moonsault, but Toyota's able to counter a backdrop attempt with a German suplex for a close call, this despite having basically nothing in the match beforehand. You wonder if Kong might just be a little bit in disbelief, but she's still able to counter the moonsault, this time by getting her knees up. By now though, we have a sense that a big comeback might be on the way, that Aja's trying to hold it off as much as possible, or perhaps trying to snuff out all hope before Toyota can execute. Kong slams Toyota and goes up top, but suddenly Manami's up and kicking her off the ropes, all the way to the floor. A huge dropkick from the top to the outside follows, and now Toyota's grabbing a table, again looking for the big aerial assault that's going to change her fortunes, and again it doesn't work. Kong is still able to get knees up, and Manami's aerial attacks just don't have their usual energy. Too much damage has been done. Kong subsequently pile drives Toyota through the table, and surely now there's no way back. Kong tells the fans that they're number one, mocking any hope they had of this supposed flying angel taking the title. After all, she's crashed and burned just about every time she's tried to fly at the Jungle Emperor. And yet, Toyota kicks out of not one, not two, but 3 backdrop drivers, leaving Aja somewhat exasperated. How on earth is she doing this? What more can it possibly take? Suddenly, Kong makes an unforced error. She tries a second rope splash, and this time it's Toyota who gets her feet up. With Toyota threatening the comeback once again, Kong thwarts a Japanese Ocean suplex attempt and tries for the Hurricane, but Toyota's able to block it and hit the big suplex, her best moment of the match so far. Suddenly Toyota can feel it, can taste it, but even the slightest misstep will be punished. A Manami roll attempt is countered by a powerbomb. Aja drops to her knees after the kickout, becoming even more frustrated by Toyota's resilience. Toyota tries another reversal from the top, but is unable to pull Kong off this time, who hits a hellacious banzai drop. This time, only the ropes save Toyota. Kong goes for one of her favourites, the back elbow drop off the top, but once again, Toyota is able to get up and intercept, and this time, she's more sure of her attack. One move can equalise everything, and that move is the Victory Star drop. In one huge blow, with another failed attempt at trying to flatten Toyota, it's as if all is suddenly even. Only a few seconds of Toyota struggling with dead weight and a nearby rope save Kong for the time being. As Kong gets up, Toyota looks to run in, perhaps for another big Manami roll. However, she runs right into the Hurricane. The back fist from hell connects, but somehow Toyota kicks out again. She took Aja's best shot, and she survived. The Hurricane was almost a desperation one for Aja, and she cannot immediately capitalise. With the crowd roaring Toyota on, they both take a brief pause before the final act. A still dazed Kong tries another backdrop, but Toyota counters in midair for another near fall. From there she goes to the top, but again Kong thwarts with a strike and a huge power slam off the second rope. And she kicks out. Kong cannot believe it. Does she have anything that she can beat Toyota with? Again, Kong takes Toyota and puts her up in the corner, possibly making it up as she goes along by this point. Toyota tries to push away, but Kong buys herself more time to think by hitting another Hurricane. Surely now it's academic. But no, it isn't at all. Out of nowhere, Toyota jumps over Kong, leaving her stranded on the ropes. It's a horrible position, and from there Toyota hits a huge electric chair suplex. Suddenly the champ is poleaxed, and if Toyota is going to claim this belt, it has to happen now. She picks Aja up, and using the corner for help, is able to put the monster on her shoulders, is able to straightjacket those arms, and she hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex. After 23 minutes 22, Manami Toyota has ended the reign of Aja Kong. She is the new Red Belt champion. It was a battle for the ages, one of the great underdog performances. To get there, Manami Toyota had to survive some of the most outrageous punishments that you will see in a ring. The stretching, the power moves, the constant counters. At times it felt like she couldn't do anything. Any attempt at a comeback was doomed to failure. But from the Victory Star drop onwards, well, the match changed. That was the crucial moment, really. It's an amazing watch. The sort of match that would be, in the careers of most wrestlers, easily the greatest performance of their lives. For Kong and Toyota, this match usually ends up rated a ways behind their Big Egg Universe battle, as well as a couple of their other clashes that we're going to be covering. It is in many ways a similar match to the Big Egg Universe, although one where some of the big moments are thoroughly reversed, such as Toyota's attack on the outside. Also, some have questioned the ending a little, thinking that the intention was perhaps to perform that Japanese Ocean Cyclone from the second rope and finish that way, but they weren't quite able to do it, and so instead they did it on the mat. It still works brilliant on the mat, of course, and really it's just total nitpicking, but some do think that the last spot takes a little bit too long. In any case, this is still utterly phenomenal. The fact that this isn't the best match Kong and Toyota ever had just shows the level these two are on, especially when they're against each other. And well, we've just got more to come. While it doesn't take too long for Manami Toyota and Aja Kon to face off again, I should obviously briefly mention the match that Toyota had on the 7th of May, her defence of the title against Kyoko Inoue. I won't say much for now other than Manami Toyota managed to get through that night with the title still in her hands, but obviously we're going to be covering that match extensively in part 2. While it's announced not long after that Aja Kon's going to be getting her rematch on the 27th of June at the Nakajima Sports Centre in Sapporo as part of the Movement Tour, there are some other very big goings on happening. In the main, there's the full-on return of Akira Hokuto, who will be coming back to full-time AJW action on the same show. While she actually made a brief appearance at 7th of May's G-Top second event, reuniting with Suzuka Manami one last time on Minami's retirement night, this is our newly loved up Dangerous Queen's proper return, following the April weekend she had in North Korea where she wrestled old rival Bull Nakano and fell in love with Kensuke Sasaki. Already, the big match has been booked. Following her victory over Aja Kon, Manami Toyota said that she wouldn't properly feel like the champion until she had beaten Hokuto, something which brought the Dangerous Queen into the ring and set the flames going, and soon enough the match is booked to happen on September 2nd. The Toyota vs Hokuto super fight, for it is being billed as one, will happen at the Nippon Budokan, and the red belt will be on the line. That is if Toyota is still champion by then. Now, you may wonder what happened to Hokuto's plan of returning to action when Zenjo made their return to the Tokyo Dome, and while that was indeed the idea at one stage, it is kind of clear by this point that returning to the Dome isn't part of AJW's plans right now, the relatively poor performance of Wrestling Queendom perhaps finally putting paid to that idea. AJW certainly can't run the Dome again without the help of every other Joshi promotion and then some, and it seems like they're trying to wean themselves off of lots of interpromotional action at this time. While the quality of the in-ring action is still utterly exceptional, AJW, and indeed a big chunk of ProRes as a whole, is slowly starting to enter a down period, particularly as Japan's recession woes continue. And so running the Dome again isn't really feasible right now, and the popularity of Hokuto, complete with even more attention from the press due to her whirlwind romance and lightning quick marriage with Kensuke, means it's obviously better if she starts to perform more regularly once again. With all this going on, a rematch between the Flying Angel and the woman who'd previously held the belt for 850 days may seem oddly like a bit of an afterthought, almost as if this is just a stopgap for the new champion on her way to a huge bout against Akira Hokuto, when it is surely anything but. Bluntly put, the daughter of King Kon wants her title back, and she has the tools in her arsenal to get it on any night she wishes. As we're going to see, this is far more than a bump in the road. And so let's get into it. While there'll certainly be more Kong and Toyota clashes to cover in this series, I suppose that this match could constitute the third in a trilogy that started at Big Egg Universe, where Toyota took the champion to the limit in the first bout, was able to take the extra step and win the title in the second, and now has to defend that title in a third rubber match of sorts. And again, it's going to be a wild ride. You know that these two are going to start fast, and just as Aja hit a backdrop right from the bell last time, this time Toyota hits a German suplex. However, Aja dodges the dropkick this time and instead goes up top for a huge missile dropkick of her own. I always like these little role reversals, the twists that you get. Toyota has a bit more of the champion's confidence, quickly dodging and hitting the Manami roll, following up with a DDT, not wanting to work so much from under like she did in the previous encounter. Indeed, she follows this up with a half crab, trying to do her own stretches on the challenger. Still, Aja's quick with the strikes to knock her down. If there is one weapon Aja has that Toyota finds it hard to cope with, it's the vicious kicks, and from there Kong naturally starts folding Toyota up. A hideous Boston Crab, more strikes including a couple of headshots, and an attack that's a bit more focused on the upper body and head as opposed to the lower back, with more kicks, nasty headbutts, and the classic stalling pile driver. Aja may not have been able to stretch Toyota into submission last time, but maybe she could try and knock her out or otherwise put her to sleep. Aja's spell here, however, isn't nearly as dominant as before. Toyota is able to get out with slaps. Still, when she tries to run Kong to the ropes, the Jungle Emperor responds with a huge palm of her own, and another gets a 2 count. She can always go to those big hits as a great equaliser. We get the slingshot backbreaker and a nasty camel clutch variation, Kong thinking that perhaps it is best to slow Toyota down and get that more extended dominance, work over the lower back, and this vicious clutch will happily serve that purpose for quite a while, Kong only briefly breaking off for a big suplex before continuing the stretch. There's similar beats here to the previous 2 matches, but Toyota being champion certainly creates a different dynamic, one where Aja simply can't lord over it all like she did at Wrestling Queendom. Hefty kicks, a splash and a trip to the outside follow, with Kong now finally starting to dig in, even flattening the champion with a guardrail before returning to the centre of the ring and letting Toyota come back, showing that she's in control, saying that you are champion in name only. And yet, when she runs Toyota to the ropes, the champ surprises her with a springboard body attack. Again, this is something that didn't quite work last time, but now Toyota's hitting most of her aerial assaults, and she's quickly up to hit 4 missile dropkicks in a row, 1 for each corner. Something like that almost telling the opponent that no matter what, they can't break them. Aja has to go to the ropes to prevent a German suplex attempt, which isn't what she usually has to do, but Toyota makes an error with a couple of slaps. Naturally, there's a big response and Aja hits a powerbomb, followed by a second rope splash. Not enough though, and Toyota does the big bridge out. Toyota tries in vain to block a superplex, having to bridge out again, and then tries a Manami roll. However, this ends in a sit-out powerbomb, Kong now seemingly going through the gears, showing why she was champ for so long, Toyota having to survive once more. A huge backdrop results in the closest near fall yet, but Manami's able to counter another super move. She hits Aja Kong with a sunset bomb, getting a near fall of her own. It's all pretty well poised as we get closer to the finishing stretch. As in the last match, Toyota tries for a moonsault, but again Kong is able to get out of the way. However, Toyota shifts her weight on a backdrop, scoring another near fall. Again though, the moonsault proves foolhardy. Kong intercepts, and this time she hits a super backdrop. But still, she is getting more and more exasperated with Toyota's continued kickouts. With the crowd roaring Toyota on as they go to the corner again, the champ looks to do what she did to win the belt, jumping over the ascending Kong to get her on the shoulders, and Aja has to hold on for dear life. Toyota then instead opts to kick her from the post to the floor. Toyota goes for her signature no-hand somersault plancher, but can't complete it. She quickly kicks Kong back, but when she tries a body attack off the top rope, Aja throws a kick of her own. You wonder if that is the decisive moment, especially when Kong hits a huge water wheel drop off the top. But still, Toyota has just enough to bridge out. Aja signals that the game shall end now, and goes for the Uraken, but Toyota has enough for one last stand, blocking and hitting the Japanese Ocean suplex. A fine move, but not enough. Kong tries for her top rope back elbow, but Toyota intercepts, hitting another sunset bomb, Victory Star style. Only the rope saves Aja, who has to roll outside. Somehow, even after all this punishment, all they've gone through, Toyota executes her no-hand somersault plancher, as defiant a move as there possibly could be at this stage of the match. Surely that is the decisive moment. Toyota looks to finish Aja the same way she did before, put her on the post and hit the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. And this time, it's Aja who jumps back over her. Toyota flips out of a backdrop, but in doing so is finally wide open and the Uraken echoes around Sapporo. Somehow, Toyota kicks out, but the Jungle Emperor will not be denied, now hitting a huge orange crush. Toyota keeps Lorraine going just that little bit longer, but the crowd stomps, shouts Kong, knowing what's coming. One more huge Uraken blast connects, Kong covers, and that's it. In 22 minutes 45, Aja Kong reclaimed the red belt. Good lord. What to even say? It's hard to sum up just what's being covered. After 2 unreal matches, somehow Kong and Toyota were able to add even more in this decisive bout, going through so many different twists and turns, all the while building an incredible story. The little role reversals from the previous clashes are more than just cute callbacks. Ultimately, it builds up to the biggest role reversal of them all at the end, when Aja Kong is the one who traps Toyota in the corner, doing exactly what Toyota did to win the title. If I had to pick a favourite match of the trilogy, I don't know, it's a close call between Big Egg Universe and this bout. The Dome bout in front of that huge and incredibly hot crowd is obviously as special as it gets. To see the pair steal the show, further cement their greatness in front of such an audience, to go well beyond even the wildest expectations. But even better is that it's not a match in a vacuum. They could do more, completing a trilogy, never missing a step and utterly sticking the landing. And that's why Kong and Toyota are two of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Still, Kong vs Toyota isn't over, and the battle for the red belt isn't over. Just as Kong is crowned champion again and the red belt's put around her waist, a new challenger enters. Dynamite Kansai. In other words, the Aja Kong of JWP, and someone else who Kong had to face on that big night in the Dome, in another classic match. Dynamite Kansai has come here, and she wishes to challenge for the belt. Naturally, Aja Kong accepts, and we have our next big title fight. It's kind of amusing to see how things go. We started with an event in which AJW wanted to show that they could pull a big audience without anything interpromotional, but it's not too long before we go back to the Joshi promotions working together, with the big 3WA belt clash between Kong and Kansai scheduled for the 30th of August. Again, as mentioned previously, business is unfortunately sagging a little across the board, in wrestling and in the country as a whole. Now's not a good time to go back to the Dome, and now's also perhaps not the time to try and go it fully alone. People generally are optimistic at Zenjo, seeing as the quality's still right up top. After all, there have been plenty of ups and downs in the past. With that said, only the Matsunaga brothers truly know the state of their business. Anyway, we'll cover Kon vs Kansai in a while. For now, we will keep the focus on Manami Toyota and the start of her path back to challenging for the title. Even beyond the battles over the red belt with Aja Kong, we are perhaps still yet to cover the most important portion of Manami Toyota's 1995. We're building up to one weekend in September that will truly seal her position at the very top. This isn't just about the dream fight with Akira Hokuto, which is very much still a thing even if Toyota isn't champ anymore. To be honest, it's not as if a main event singles bout between Manami Toyota and Akira Hokuto needed the red belt to be a huge contest in every respect. It's also about the Grand Prix. Toyota previously won the GP in 1990, and since then she'd come pretty close to a second victory, never quite cinching it. She'd lost out in 1994 against Yumiko Hotta. A second victory in 1995, seeing as it comes with the guarantee of another shot at the 3WA title, could be pretty important. Anyway, Toyota's Grand Prix tournament begins on 23rd of July at Korakuen Hall with a matchup against someone who she's very familiar with, and it's one that's worth covering. Mima Shimoda was in the same dojo class as Tokyo, they debuted on the same night, 5th of August 1987, and they have a team together, the Tokyo Sweethearts. Shimoda is incredible, but Toyota has always been a step ahead, and Shimoda's never been able to overcome her in either singles or tag action. Although Toyota and Shimoda have their team, their main tag partners are Toshio Yamada and Etsuko Mita respectively. That team with Mita, Las Cachorras Orientales, the Oriental Bitches or simply LCO, certainly did wonders when it came to Shimoda developing an utterly vicious mean streak, finding her best work in a brawling style that we'll get into, and well, this is the sort of match where even if it's a tournament, and even if Toyota and Shimoda are good friends, there's a little something heading into it. Perhaps not an ill feeling, but Shimoda in particular feeling like she's got something to prove, to have her say, and show that Mima-chan is just as good as the Flying Angel. Now, this is one of those matches where so much happens, and there's so many moves over the course of 30 minutes that it would take quite a long time to go through them all, and there are better ways of doing it. After all, what we have here is absolutely one of the most fun and best matches that you will find in a Grand Prix, Champion Carnival or G1 style tournament. You know what you're going to get right from the off when Toyota, knowing Shimoda all too well and knowing what she's going to do, fights fire with fire. She's happy to brawl with her, to take the action straight outside, pile drive her on the floor, break out the table and so on. Of course, Shimoda is pretty quick to respond, and we go from there. A Rocky-esque battle that never lets up, with barely any chance to breathe. So, what should we talk about? Well, first we should talk about how brilliant Mima Shimoda is, as sometimes she doesn't get enough flowers. Shimoda is one of the greatest tag wrestlers ever, a 7-time winner of the 3WA tag belts, someone with a phenomenal range that saw her succeed in Japan and Mexico. She's a brilliant technician, but, well, she uses that technical base as a means to brawl. She rudas it up at every opportunity, pulling away at all extremities, yanking the hair in 1,000 different ways, getting the crowd involved as the action spreads through the arena. She's brilliant. And she does it all with a highly expressive smile on her face. She just loves to fight, basically. You should really watch more of Mima Shimoda, especially the many classics she had teaming with Etsuko Mito as LCO, who is basically her kindred spirit. We see this fabulous style of brawling all throughout the match, Shimoda allowing the hate to flow through her, Toyota happy to respond back in kind, especially in the match's first half. There will be some nasty submissions and stretches, of course. It's not a Toyota match if she doesn't get wrapped up like a pretzel. But as we get into the second half, we've definitely got a classic going on, leading up to a finish where Toyota and Shimoda are going to try damn near everything to get the win. All this is a good chance to talk about the style of Manami Toyota. Generally, a wrestler who people absolutely love, although sometimes she gets the odd bit of criticism that's worth addressing. Toyota's style is exceptionally modern in many ways. Really, it hasn't aged a day. Certainly not when it comes to matches like this one that easily could have taken place last year or even last week with pretty much nothing changed. She is always, I think, a wrestler that's in the moment, one where the big moment of selling is all about the impact. Sometimes people get annoyed by Toyota's selling, it should be said, that it's mainly based on screaming, not so much on selling the injury or moves in the first half of a match not always contributing to what happens in the second half. I'd say that her character is always about showing extreme levels of guile, a kind of Misawa-esque stoicism, determined to make it look like it's not hurting when it absolutely is. I am aware that sounds a little like a cop-out, as if I'm excusing just plain old weak selling, but it pairs with her recklessness and risk-taking, and it is a style that's characteristic of classic Joshi in many ways. This is often the very quickest of styles, the one that's most about going from moment to moment and toughing it all out, especially here when Zenjo is still at the height of its powers, and Toyota is one of its best representatives. The best thing about Toyota in this style is that she is one of the all-time great executors when it comes to moves, and she manages to do them in a way that's quite natural, almost purposefully rough around the edges at times, a little Sabu-esque where she's still always in control, handles all the bumps to a turn and so forth. This tends to make you believe even in the thoroughly outrageous. When Toyota manages to pull off one of the all-time great aerial moves, her no-hands springboard somersault to the outside, after almost 30 minutes of action, you're just utterly taken in. Toyota appears like she's making up wrestling as she goes, doing things that might get ugly at points, that may not be the most tactically brilliant move, but like she's just wrestling entirely with her heart, and I think that's the real pull of watching her. A lot of people try to wrestle this way nowadays, this sort of style that can be heavy on spots, not necessarily heavy on the traditional story or psychology and so on, and some are utterly exceptional at it, the folks like Will Ospreay, Kota Ibushi in his prime and so on. But I'm not sure if anyone's ever been better at it than Manami Toyota. There are so many glorious moments here, of course. Shimoda's crowd-appealing 4 backdrops on the outside, one for each side of the Korakuen Hall, that aforementioned no-hands plancher, and eventually the big finish itself. Again, it's a modern finish, very much based around the landing of big moves and near falls, although it mainly centres around Toyota trying and never quite managing to pull off her biggest weapon, the Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex. Both Toyota and Shimoda have finishers that are utterly devastating and will defeat anybody, but they can take time to execute and a whole lot of wearing down of an opponent. Shimoda has the Death Lake Driver, essentially a super tiger suplex, but like Toyota, she's never able to get it, one particularly amazing counter happening when Toyota spins it into a body press mid-move. With both unable to execute that big finisher, both Toyota and Shimoda try ever more desperately to get to the victory with their second best blows, the Japanese Ocean Suplex, the regular Tiger Suplex. But of course neither Toyota nor Shimoda will be beaten by those moves. The ever-brilliant Korakuen Hall crowd gets on the side of Shimoda in particular for most of the bout, wanting her to pull off an upset, screaming when she gets as close as she's able to with a super backdrop. But eventually, neither can beat the other. As Shimoda intercepts Toyota in the corner once again and hits a superplex, the bell wins. It's a 30-minute draw, with both scoring a point. The post-match is kind of amusing. Shimoda takes Toyota's hand to help her get up, although she does then slap her before leaving the ring, saying backstage that she wasn't quite able to kill Toyota. In the end, after this phenomenal match, Shimoda and Toyota will remain friends, occasional tag partners, even 3WA tag champions the following year. This is just how the match was always going to be, good friends becoming bitter enemies for 30 glorious minutes. By the way, for those who like to keep track of such things, whether out of interest or out of spite, this is the third Manami Toyota match from 1995 that got a 5-star rating from The Observer. By the end of the year, she will have had 5 matches rated as such. The pages of the old rag sheet were full of praise for her work, and so when people wanted to get into the world of Joshi, whether it's by trading the tapes, looking at low-quality real video clips or some other means, well, Manami Toyota was often the first wrestler that they wanted to see. 30 years later, she is still a big gateway into the world of Joshi Pro Res. And so, we come to the big interpromotional fight, Kong vs Kansai. It's not exactly a match that needs a lot of hype. Again, when these two got it on at the Big Egg Universe in the V-Top semi-final, they set the whole stadium on fire. Kong and Kansai are the two big badasses, the final bosses of AJW and JWP respectively. In a film, this would be the big scrap between two gang leaders. It's not good versus evil, it's simply a matter of seeing who the daddy is. Kansai had her own dominant 656-day reign with JWP's top belt, the openweight title, from the start of 1992 to the autumn of 1994, and obviously she's appeared plenty in AJW already. Indeed, she and Mayumi Yazaki have already held the organisation's top tag belts, the 3WA Tag Team Championship, winning them against eternal rivals Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada on April 11, 1993, and not relinquishing them for 235 days, when Toyota and Yamada were finally able to get them back. Still, winning the top singles title? That's a whole other matter entirely, a level beyond what any other outsiders managed to achieve in Zenjo. The match takes place on 30th of August at the Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium in front of 6,800 people at a show dubbed The Queen's Holy Night. It's a pretty stacked card as normal, one that we will be revisiting later. Indeed, Kansai vs Kong is actually the semi-main event, with Kyoko and Takako Inoue defending their tag titles in the final match of the evening against Manami Toyota and Saki Hasegawa. We'll look at that in the next video, but for now, we have two badasses ready to kick lumps out of each other over the red belt. The dynamic for this match is quite similar to the one that Kong and Kansai had at Big Egg Universe. One of Kong's greatest strengths against the rest of AJW is her strikes, a place where she doesn't really have an equal on the roster. However, Kansai's strikes, especially her kicks, are the equal of Kong's, if not better. Her blows are absolutely lethal, and Kong is unlikely to be as dominant as she often is against the opposition here. Still, Aja does possess the biggest strike of them all, that being the Uraken. As such, it is plausible that this match could end with a knockout, as opposed to a pinfall or submission. Kong makes the quick start with the inverted Oklahoma Stampede, following that up when Kansai tries to counter with a huge super water wheel drop, the idea presumably being to take Dynamite out as quickly as possible, with a move that actually finished off Kansai in her previous attempt at Kong's title back in 1993. Kansai survives this time, it's not long before she comes back, and the two start a big exchange of chops, headbutts and slaps, gutsing out all the big hits and replying in kind. A succession of headbutts is enough to briefly stun Kansai, but she then replies with side kicks, finally assaulting the legs to bring Kong down and apply a scorpion deathlock, soon turning that into an STF. Kong eventually gets to the ropes, but Kansai is not done, landing a whopper of a head kick to the grounded Aja. With Kong utterly motionless, there's no choice for the ref but to count, and he gets up to 7 before Kong stands up, only to be brought down again by a big backdrop and a rear naked choke. As Aja tries not to fade, one thing is clear. This isn't a position that the daughter of King Kong is all that familiar with, being the one who's got to weather the storm. Kong once again reaches the ropes, this time immediately covering up as soon as Kansai releases. A nice little detail. Finally, Kong gets to reply. A wave of headbutts, a big roundhouse, a stomp to the head, a huge head kick on the ropes, and finally one more big shot as Dynamite desperately tries to get up. Now, a motionless Kansai is being countered out. Right up until 8, Kansai does not move a muscle, and then suddenly, she manages to power up, just back from the brink. The crowd becomes rather unglued at that point, it must be said. Kong's not going to let up, hitting a big brainbuster and the stalling piledriver. Clearly the head is the place where this match is going to be decided. Kansai tries to counter a running attack with another headshot, but gets tied up in the ropes and blasted again. However, Kong misses a second rope body splash. Right now things are pretty even. Kong counters Kansai's own one with the water wheel drop, hits the splash, and tries for a suplex. Kansai gets out of it, and Kong tries a surprise Uraken. Kansai manages to dodge, but it leaves her open for another big roundhouse. With the JWP crew roaring her on, Kansai makes it up at 9, but is immediately laid out by a backdrop driver. Not enough for the pin though. Kong goes up top and hits her favoured back elbow drop, but again Kansai kicks out, and Aja begins to get frustrated. But still, the plan is clear. It's time to divorce the challenger's head. The pickup, the little slaps, and the final blow. But Kansai dodges the Uraken again, this time taking Kong down with a leg sweep and turns the tables completely with another huge kick. Kong has to muster everything to power up at 9. Still looking groggy, Kansai runs in, straight into the Uraken. Surely that is it. Kansai is flat out. Kong recovers in the corner, barely even looking, maybe not even able to look. And somehow, using the ropes, Kansai slowly stirs and just finds her way back up. The best shot from Kong wasn't enough to knock Dynamite out. There follows a struggle up top, Kansai trying to bat Aja away and dodging another Uraken, but then jumping down to the apron to land another head kick on Kong as she tries to make her way up. Kong again just manages to get up at 9, using the ropes to get on her feet, and even the ref to stop her just immediately falling back down again. It seems as though neither wrestler can get this knockout, really. Kansai switches things up, trying for the Splash Mountain, but while Kong's able to get out of this, she gets desperate, going to the top and quickly being intercepted. Kansai hits the Splash Mountain, but the champion just gets her shoulder up. Kansai knows what she must do. Die Hard Kansai is the only thing that will beat Kong, and she goes for it now. Kong fights her away, hitting a half Uraken to thwart the attempt, but then a decisive moment comes. Kong tries for the Uraken again, but gets kicked away, and then, suddenly, Kansai hits another huge roundhouse, this time on the Uraken arm. Aja leaves that arm hanging out for a mere second, but it proves to be a fatal mistake. Kong screams, and Kansai suddenly sees the opportunity. Kick after kick lands on that arm, with just as much venom as all those previous headshots. Kong is now a wounded animal, sent out to the floor, her seconds desperately trying to bandage her up, But when she does eventually get back in, those plasters are little more than a target. Kansai's assault is relentless, Aja Kong is in agony, and Kansai tries to hit Splash Mountain again. Kon escapes and desperately tries to haul her now useless right arm up, vainly trying for the Uriken, but she takes even more kicks to it for her trouble, and she is now at Kansai's mercy. The JWP top dog has her chance at history. Kansai hits another head kick and wrestles Kong up for a huge slam, her own weariness thwarting the Splash Mountain, but Kong barely survives. From there, however, Kansai lifts Kong up to the ropes, drapes her over the shoulders, and ascends herself. Die hard, Kansai. History has been made. In 18 minutes 09, Dynamite Kansai defeats Aja Kong and wins the red belt, becoming the first outsider to hold Zenjo's top title. It was a hellacious match filled with some unbelievably stiff strikes, but it was quite the amazing thing to watch. For me, this is better even than their match at the Big Egg Universe. Aja is incredible, of course, especially right at the end when ultimately she comes undone in a way that was similar to the V-Top final against Hokuto, where a damaged limb would also result in her loss. While the knockout attempts from both wrestlers ultimately didn't come off, Aja's end came thanks to Kansai taking out her biggest weapon, obliterating the Uriken, wounding the monster, and eventually pinning her. It's another big twist, really. The whole match was seemingly building to one of these two not being able to answer a count of 10, until Kansai took the opportunity to change the whole complexion of the bout. Much like every other match we're covering here, it's obviously another big must-watch, and it adds a whole new dimension to things. With Kansai now being the champion, naturally the whole of AJW is going to be looking to reclaim that belt, to be the one who wins back Zenjo's honour. The Grand Prix is coming to an end, and what is perhaps even more than a title opportunity is going to come with it. So who's going to get that chance? These are all things that we'll get to, but Kansai's victory feels like a good point to pause. In the second part of this series, we'll be making a start on Kyoko Inoue's road. We'll see a couple of legendary tag matches, a big battle against a legend, and the small matter of the 1995 Match of the Year. All that and more is to come, but hopefully you've enjoyed this first part, and until the next time, bye for now. For our second part, we're starting down the path of Kyoko Inoue. Just as Manami Toyota was having an absolutely amazing 1995, Kyoko was doing the same, building a career best year and taking her own road that's going to lead all the way to the red belt. Again, we have 4 matches to look at, 2 battles against a legend and mentor, a belter of a 2 out of 3 falls tag main event in Osaka, and a title clash that was voted the 1995 Match of the Year. There's plenty more wrestling to look at, but naturally we need a bit of background. And so, let's get on it. Kyoko Inoue was part of AJW's 1988 class, debuting 1 year after Manami Toyota, 2 years after Aja Kong, and graduating alongside fellow future stars Mariko Yoshida and her near-constant tag partner, the unrelated Takako Inoue. Kyoko's talent was, just as with everyone else who manages to make it through the AJW dojo, pretty clear from the off, although apparently her path through the dojo and as a rookie was not entirely straightforward, one thing being that she was at one point in relationship with a man. A brief word is perhaps needed here. The AJW dojo, much like all famed pro-res dojos, and especially in the 1980s when hundreds of ladies applied to join it, was fearsome. Of course, it's a place where you're going to be spending most of your time in thoroughly intense training. If you weren't training, you'd be doing work somewhere else. There is of course a Kohai Senpai system that you'll be a part of once you graduate, being assigned to one of the seniors and so on, and perhaps you'll also be in one of the Matsunaga Brothers restaurant locations, with the dojo itself being a part of a huge Matsunaga-owned complex that included a restaurant staffed by trainees and young graduates who were on the undercard. On top of all that, there are rules for how trainees and graduates carry themselves, with 3 specific don'ts: no smoking, no alcohol, and no boyfriends. While these did lax a little bit over the years, and were also dependent on a wrestler's status, not applying so much to the seniors, there are more than a few legendary stories of Zenjo stars going out and out-drinking all who oppose them. They were certainly hard and fast in the late 80s for a trainee or rookie. With all this in mind, as well as the pay generally being pretty awful, and AJW's schedule being far more intense than most other pro-res companies, it is little wonder why so few ladies made it through the dojo at all, with even fewer graduates going on to have any kind of career. Even those who graduated were often fortunate to make it past more than a couple of years in Zenjo. And so, Kyoko Inoue did, apparently, at one stage fall foul of the no men rule. Largely this meant that while she wanted to be a babyface and largely always worked as one, there was a short period where she had to work as a heel with a somewhat offensive, crazy gimmick. Still, her rather natural babyface streak would shine through. She's such an expressive worker, so easy to get behind, and she's also ridiculously athletic, perhaps the best Zenjo worker of them all when it comes to sheer conditioning, speed and strength, a complete all-rounder. Tag work was a big part of her rise, particularly the aforementioned team with Takako Inoue, usually known as the Double Inoues, who'd go on to win the 3WA tag titles 3 times. But the story of her ascent as a singles worker is actually quite similar to that of Aja Khan's, in that Bull Nakano is a rather prominent fixture. Kyoko and Bull's relationship is very close. Kyoko started out as a kohai for Nakano, one of her underlings, both as part of her Gokumon tour stable and behind the scenes. She and 1989 graduate Tomoko Watanabe would do busy work for her and so on, and Kyoko largely got over with the crew both thanks to her innate ability, talent and expressions, but also through doing silly impressions and being the butt of various ribs. Sometimes good-natured and, well, sometimes not, basically amounting to bullying. Although she always had Bull's support and backing, despite the hazing from others. In a 2021 shoot interview that the pair conducted together, translated by Moscow Disco and Jabronieville at Scott's Blog of Doom, Nakano said that Kyoko was one of the 2 best rookies she'd ever seen, alongside Akira Hokuto. Kyoko also certainly wasn't the only one to get a hefty amount of bullying in her younger days. Just for example, Aja Khan got it thanks to her size and being mixed race, and Manami Toyota got it thanks to her southern Japan rural background. One of her breakthrough singles matches would indeed come against Bull Nakano, challenging for the red belt in 1991 as an underdog in what would end up being quite a bloody affair, and there were other classics against Manami Toyota, one in 1992 and one in 94, where Toyota would overcome her and unify Kyoko's All-Pacific title with her IWA World title. And well, that about leads us to 1995 and Inoue's first big singles match of the year, against someone who couldn't be more familiar. We go back then to where we started the first part, Wrestling Queendom 1995 Victory on the 26th of March at the Yokohama Arena, the night where Manami Toyota ended Aja Khan's reign and became the Red Belt champion. There's another significant title on the line in the semi-main event, and that would be the WWF Women's Championship, currently held by Bull Nakano after her triumphant win against Alundra Blaze at Big Egg Universe. And so what we have here is a rather obscure WWF title bout, one that doesn't often get highlighted in the archives, not even in the recent WWE Vault episode all about the Hall of Famer, although I assume rather convoluted rights issues have a bit to do with that. What we have here is Kyoko Inoue battling her senpai, Bull Nakano, for the WWF crown. Of course, this is the first time that 2 Japanese women have fought over this belt. Indeed, I'm sure it's the first time that 2 pro-res wrestlers have fought over a Fed title since 1985, when George Cobra Takano defended the WWF Junior Heavyweight title against Don Arakawa in the last match before that belt became inactive. Just to complete the circle, there wouldn't be another WWF or WWE Women's Singles title match between 2 Japanese wrestlers for 28 years. The only other one saw Io Sky defend the WWE Women's Championship against Asuka in a stunner of a match on the 22nd September 2023 SmackDown. With all those stats gone through, we've already done plenty of build-up, so we should get into this blockbuster clash between Kohai and Senpai. After a quick handshake, Kyoko's immediately trying to hit a lariat, but Bull dodges and hits a quick one of her own. The lariat is a strong move for both wrestlers, not a finisher, but their main strike, one of the things that Kyoko definitely took from Nakano. Inoue intercepts a top rope attack, tries for a superplex, and the pair ultimately spill out the ring. Nakano tries to run Kyoko in, but she does her signature springboard back elbow off the guardrail, which is pretty sweet. We get one of Inoue's favourites, the big run from the entrance, hitting Bull with a lariat. Back in the ring, Kyoko starts working over the Great Bull, a surfboard stretch is one of her favourites, but when she runs into another clothesline, Nakano's able to start working her, trying for her favoured Angelito Scorpion crosslock. She's not quite able to cinch it, but she certainly does some strong work on Kyoko's neck, hitting another lariat and applying a dragon sleeper, soon following that up with a rear naked choke. The senpai is very much in control right now, but Kyoko is able to reverse this position, trying to work for the rocking horse. It's a hard move to do on someone like Bull, but Inoue manages to for a bit, also applying a camel clutch. It's been a fairly extensive bout of stretching with no clear winner, and Inoue changes tack, running Bull to the post and hitting her corner vaulting DDT. Another rope run, and it's clear how well Bull nosed Kyoko. She's at the ropes hitting a lariat before she can try a springboard move. Still all nicely poised as we get to the halfway point. Bull does something very cool, a couple of lariats in the corner that result in a Tree of Woe type variation, which she capitalises on with an axe kick on the apron. She hits a springboard calf branding and then continues to work her pupil over, using a gorilla clutch and a half crab. Back up now and another rope one. This time Kyoko reverses, hits a lariat on the rope, but then Bull does the same to her. In many ways this is like watching a mirror match. While it would be easy to point to Aja Kong as Bull Nakano's successor, certainly when it comes to success, Kyoko Inoue has a pretty strong case for that herself. A huge lariat on the apron, and Bull Ortons the hell out of Kyoko with the ring rope DDT because, you know, Joshi always does it first. Bull goes up top looking for her finishing guillotine leg drop, and she hits it, and shockingly, Kyoko kicks out at 1. It's fighting spirit o'clock, Kyoko using that pain to hulk herself up. Bull tries to go up again, but Kyoko surprises her with one of her best shots, the run-up suplex off the top. Kyoko's roaring back, slamming Bull and hitting the corner springboard back elbow, and signals her favourite move, the Niagara driver. Bull gets out and tries a lariat, getting countered by a German suplex, and from there Kyoko hits the Niagara driver, but Bull just survives. Kyoko doesn't want to waste time, going for it again. Bull manages to get out but nearly gets rolled up by a head scissor takedown. For the third time Kyoko goes for the Niagara driver, but this time, Bull's ready. She counters by lifting Kyoko up on her back and hitting Bull's Poseidon. Kyoko has to get out of there, soon getting hit by a big plunger, Bull really going to town with her weary body, and suddenly it appears academic. Bull hits a reverse DDT back in the ring and follows it with another guillotine leg drop. Kyoko somehow survives again, and Nakano looks for even more. Up top again, Kyoko tries to resist one last time, getting up to intercept. Eventually though, a lariat is enough to give Bull the time she needs. She gets poised, hits the somersault leg drop, and that's enough. Bull Nakano retains the WWF Women's title in 17 minutes 05. Well, this was a pretty damn good match. Not an absolutely amazing one, but it may be one of the best fed title matches that you have possibly never seen, one that never gets talked about. It does get a little eclipsed by the Kong vs Toyota red belt bout that follows it. It's different to what we saw in the last video, something that was definitely more of a slow burner, a lot more in the way of technical exchanges, and something that had its own flow. Definitely a good take on the old story of master and pupil. Here the master manages to win the day, but Kyoko Inoue definitely came close. I did feel that the crowd weren't quite as into this as they could have been, which does hurt things a bit. Perhaps the WWF title being on the line didn't help matters there. I don't know, I kind of get the sense that they know from the off that because of that, this isn't going to be Kyoko's night. Even so, it's a fine match, and we do have some post-match to take care of. Bull gets on the mic and talks about possibly closing the stable she's led now for years, that being Gokomon To, something that Kyoko Inoue's been part of for quite some time. Gokomon is basically the successor to Dump Matsumoto's Gokaku Dome, or Atrocious Alliance, and closing it would end a pretty long chapter, as much as it perhaps makes sense now. Still, an emotional Kyoko Inoue gets on the mic and asks Born to not close the door on Gokomon for the time being, to wait until she is able to defeat her. Bull agrees, and we get a shout of allegiance between Bull, Kyoko, and fellow Gokomon member Tomoko Watanabe. Between Toyota's victory over Kong and her first defence, there is something of a brief interlude for two quite important exhibitions, both of which take place in April of '95. We mentioned the trip to North Korea in the first part, one that centred around Bull Nakano taking on Akira Hokuto in a big match between two of the best, although there was also a tag match in which Hokuto and Nakano teamed up to defeat Toyota and Mariko Yoshida, this bout being the match that was actually included on WCW's Collision in Korea broadcast. Before that, however, there was also the Bridge of Dreams, the huge April 2nd Tokyo Dome card hosted by Weekly Pro Wrestling, starring 13 ProRes and MMA promotions. There would be 3 women's matches on the card, a ripping 8-woman tag opener where JWP's best get the crowd going, featuring the likes of Dynamite Kansai, Mayumi Yazaki, Devil Masami, Cutie Suzuki and so on, as well as a rather short MMA match from LLPW where Shinobu Kandori quickly dispatched Harley Saito. Zenjo, naturally, put on an absolute banger. Kyoko Inoue and Aja Kong going up against Manami Toyota and Blizzard Yuki, which, if you've seen the Big Egg Universe video, you will know is Saki Hasegawa's alter ego. On a historical note, both of these big exhibition bouts call back to how AJW managed to change tack earlier in the 90s, how they managed to build up a new form of interest in their product. When the days of the Crush Gals, Dump Matsumoto and all that ended, they would often run exhibitions on big male-centric cards, and the quality of these exhibitions did help to bring in a new audience that was largely male, as opposed to the screaming schoolgirls of yesteryear. The result of this was eventually another boom for Zenjo and for Joshi ProRes as a whole, although as we will eventually see, this approach doesn't come without some very significant drawbacks. Anyway, while the Bridge of Dreams is an exhibition, it has a significant result. Kyoko Inoue and Aja Kong win the bout, and it's Toyota who ends up getting pinned following a thumping Uraken and a top rope water wheel drop from Kong, Aja getting a bit of revenge the week after losing her title. Kyoko Inoue is going to get the first shot on 7th of May at a sold-out Korakuen Hall. Korakuen is AJW's home turf, and it's also Golden Week, a national holiday period. A fine time then for an appropriately golden match. Right, take a breath and go. As always, we get a fast start. Toyota hits a couple of drop kicks to send Kyoko outside and tries to go up top, but Kyoko intercepts and instead throws Manami all the way to the floor. These girls just don't know how to start slowly, do they? Kyoko hits a couple of big clotheslines to Toyota when she gets back in, and from here we start with the stretching. This is where we're going to be spending the next little while, with a camel clutch and a very elevated Boston Crab. A torture rack backbreaker offers brief pause before another camel clutch that's then turned into a dragon clutch. Being made of rubber, Manami Toyota is as ever defiant and unwilling to give through all of this, but everyone is going to try and stretch her to breaking point. The stretch continues with an even more agonising looking bow and arrow, and Kyoko may think that's enough, but an Irish whip results in a big springboard body attack reply from Toyota. You don't slow her up that quickly. Kyoko's quick to reapply the Boston Crab, and Toyota has to find the ropes. But this time, when an Irish whip is reversed and Kyoko tries for her handspring elbow, Toyota scouts it and hits a big dropkick to the back, following it up by draping Kyoko over the ropes for a couple more big shots. It's the champion's knack, a Misawa-esque trait where Toyota needs just one move to equal the damage you did to her over 5 minutes. Toyota does some stretching of her own with the manji hold, eventually working more on the legs with a nasty deathlock, and from there she tries for a rolling cradle, but while Kyoko's able to escape it a couple of times, a flip out from a backdrop allows Toyota to hit this giant swing-esque dizzying nightmare. A lot's happened already, and we're only 10 minutes in, although a lot of it may be familiar. It is the classic big AJW title bout, something we covered extensively in the first part. In many ways I could have just taken Kong's name out of the first part and pasted in Kyoko's. And indeed, this classic AJW match is what plays out. Not to say that there's anything bad about it, because Kyoko Inoue and Manami Toyota are damn good at it. There's similarities and differences all the way between them, very comparable wrestlers. Manami may be lightning fast, but Kyoko is certainly no slouch. She's stronger and, as I said, very well rounded. We have some grand moments. Manami does a big old Chris Hamrick bump on a failed attack at Kyoko on the apron, a big run through the hall to deliver a clothesline, Toyota hitting a huge no-hands pescado, while Kyoko shows her own amazing aerial skills with a run up the post straight into a head scissors for a close fall. We're at close to 20 minutes in when both Kyoko and Manami make big attempts at their top moves, the Niagara Driver and the Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex, with neither initially able to get it, and we get the typically big counters to go with these attempts. From here, Kyoko tries to slow things down again with stretching. Nothing works typically well though, aside from one big move, the Spider Nest STF. This is Inoue's most favoured submission, it gets the crowd seriously going, and Toyota has to struggle to get to those ropes as quickly as possible. Toyota is once again able to counter when they're back up, but Kyoko gets the feet up on a splash and slams Toyota down from the top for a big dropkick. However, the Niagara Driver is reversed with a German suplex. Toyota misses a moonsault, and Kyoko tries for another top rope move, but this time, something wild happens. Manami intercepts and decides to try and get this finished with a victory star drop, and, well, it goes wrong. It goes right, but it also goes wrong. Kyoko manages a sort of reversal to the point where this move ends up incredibly damaging to both wrestlers. The ref has no choice but to count both of them out. They're both struggling. Kyoko just about manages to get up at 7 before immediately falling back down, while Toyota makes it at 8. In many ways, this is the turning point in the match. Usually, big main events like this one in AJW, they go around the 25 to 30 minute mark, and that's right where we're at. Under normal circumstances, that victory star drop finishes the bout, and Manami Toyota may well have successfully defended, the seconds seeing to her at this point. However, the big clotheslines from Kyoko to send Manami outside, followed up by a wrenching Boston Crab, a kick counter and giant swing, are something new. A glitch in the system has occurred, where suddenly it seems like the huge victory star calamity has put Kyoko and Toyota at a line beyond the line, a place where they're utterly ruined, and yet they still have a lot left in the tank. That might not even make sense, but the long and short of it is that we're not finished yet, and we're heading to a new frontier. Kyoko strikes hard with 3 straight top rope back elbows, but another Niagara attempt fails and Toyota hits a half-hatch suplex, following this up with 3 moonsaults of her own and a German. The counts are all getting very close and the fighters are just kicking out, but they've still got something left, even if we don't know what it is. A Manami roll attempt gets countered with a powerbomb, but Toyota reverses a clothesline attempt to send Kyoko outside, hitting the big dropkick to the floor, a pretty defiant move. Toyota breaks the table out now, hitting a big splash onto Kyoko, and she's very much in the ascendancy, now showing some of that champion swagger, even being a bit more arrogant, thwarting an attempt at getting her off the top with a couple of missile dropkicks to the back of the head and another moonsault. Kyoko still survives, Manami tries for the Japanese Ocean Cyclone, she hits it, and somehow Kyoko kicks out of a move that almost no one escapes. Toyota is apoplectic. Kyoko somehow thwarts Toyota on the top, getting down and trying to apply that Spider Nest STF once again, pulling harder and harder as we reach the 40-minute mark. Toyota survives, but the move does its job. By this stage, both fighters are running purely on fumes and instinct. Kyoko trying for the Niagara Driver but still unable to get it, Toyota desperately trying to slap Kyoko away in the corner but then getting caught out for a huge power slam off the top. It doesn't get the pin, but now this is Kyoko's best shot. She goes for Niagara once again, but Toyota manages to counter with a roll. No dice, but it feels desperate, and a trip to the top rope is countered by a huge run-up suplex. A couple of clotheslines and the moment appears to be at hand, Kyoko signalling that it's time to get that belt. She picks Toyota up, hits the Niagara driver, and Toyota kicks out. Now it's Kyoko's turn to be disbelieving. She desperately tries again, but this time they both fall down and end up on the outside, just as we get to 45. The seconds work on both wrestlers as the count goes up, trying to squeeze out any last drops of energy, and eventually they get back in. But Kyoko's there first, again signalling that it's her time. She gets Toyota up again, this time hitting a huge spinning rack bomb, and Toyota bridges out of the pin. I should note something here. We're so used to seeing this big screaming bridge out from Toyota. It's one of her trademarks, a big traditional Joshi thing that she is the best at. This is the first time she's bridged out in the match, this far into it. Sometimes the smallest gesture of defiance is the biggest of them all. And just when Toyota looked utterly done for, she counters a whip with a big springboard sunset flip, finding something out of nowhere, getting Kyoko up and hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. What? No, the match is not over. People are in disbelief. Kyoko has to go outside and, for a second, it looks like Toyota is going to go for that big no-hand somersault plancher. But just as she tries, her body almost gives up. As if the, fifth wind now? Just suddenly came to an end. The body won't let her do it, her leg utterly giving out. Understandable, really. Kyoko sees Toyota wounded, hits a clothesline to send Toyota out again, and there is another pause. A count-out could have happened here, but Kyoko won't let it happen. It is pinfall or nothing, and we're 10 minutes away. Back in the ring, Toyota manages another reversal. Kyoko goes for the springboard, but Toyota sends her out with a dropkick. Where on earth does she get it? She hits a big knee off the top and a huge moonsault off the ropes. Still, she picks Kyoko up and gets her back in at 19, owing her that much. Toyota hits a big butterfly suplex off the top. So many of these moves that could have finished this match many times over would have finished everyone else, and yet Kyoko's shoulder is up. Suddenly, she has the boost. A few kicks to Toyota's head and a couple of major lariats. She signals to her senpai, who so happens to be on commentary, that now is the time. Toyota barely escapes one attempt, Kyoko replying with a regular powerbomb, but Toyota manages another bridge out. We're 5 minutes away as Toyota makes another counter, this time trying the quick roll-up and finding nothing. We get a German, followed by Kyoko desperately finding the ropes when Toyota tries for Japanese Ocean again, getting a big dropkick for her trouble, but still when Toyota tries again, she doesn't have the energy to lift Kyoko up. Toyota hits a huge splash, still not getting it, but then gets caught out. Kyoko hits a huge DDT from the apron to the floor. She moves as fast as possible, getting Manami back in, getting her up there, hitting as big a Niagara driver as she possibly can. No, it didn't happen. God only knows how it could at this point. Manami trying perhaps for the victory star drop, and as the bell finally rings, the two end up simply draped over each other, two pieces of dead weight hanging off that top rope. The match is over. Manami Toyota and Kyoko Inoue have gone to a 60-minute time limit draw. Good lord. How to even break this down? I should say first off that a singles match going all the way to 60 minutes was an exceptionally rare occurrence in Zenjo. It only happened a handful of times, with this being by far the most famous one. I knew this going in and I have to confess that I was worried a little. I worried that this may be the sort of 60-minute match that really should have just been 30. One where Inoue and Toyota ended up having to repeat too many beats, where it was just too many big moves for the sake of doing them. And sure, while there are certainly lots of big moves, and this is as fast as it gets for a Broadway, I needn't have worried too much. There's a huge story here, one that calls back to earlier clashes, the history for both wrestlers and so on, but also something that explores whole new areas. The second half, with both wrestlers seemingly running on empty and yet unable to stop or be stopped, was even better than the first. The calamitous victory star drop, Toyota's sudden inability to fly, Kyoko's unreal emotion, that one bridge out? A freaking bridge out? These were all something else, even beyond the shocks of some of the kickouts or the big moves. A sort of storytelling that isn't often seen in Zenjo, a sort of match that even by their standards you're not going to see a whole lot of because, well, geez, you simply can't do too many matches like this, can you? In many ways, Toyota and Kyoko are perhaps the only wrestlers in Zenjo at the time who could do this at all, to play out a 60-minute match of this standard, speed and intensity. I'm not sure if anyone else in AJW at this time has their level of athleticism. That's something Kyoko Inoue in particular was known for. It reminded me in parts of Hokuto vs Kandori, which is about as high a praise as I can give. If there's one nitpick, it is the finish. Not because it's a draw, but just because you do sense that there's a very quick rush to get into that Tree of Woe position before the bell rings, which makes it feel a little forced. Really though, that is just a nitpick. A truly remarkable bout, a testament to the unreal talent and conditioning of these two wrestlers, and, as I have mentioned a few times, this bout actually was voted 1995's Match of the Year by the readers of the Wrestling Observer, by some distance, hundreds of points ahead of the runner-up, HBK vs Razor Ramon at SummerSlam, with 6,995 shockingly only in 7th place. Fitting really, seeing as Toyota also ended up being voted the year's most outstanding wrestler. As mentioned already, these gals were utterly loved in the pages of the Observer, and as people have pointed out, yes, the style of Toyota is slap bang right in the middle of the Big Melt's wheelhouse. This is absolutely what he loves to watch. Nowadays, the other big place where people score wrestling, Cage Match, has it at 8.88. Not even in the top 20 for Manami Toyota, only 13th for Kyoko, and not even their highest rated match together. It's always a little interesting to compare the various reactions, past and present. For some people maybe this is just plain too long. Me personally, it's a freaking incredible bout, one that you should absolutely see. Is it the best Zenjo match ever? No, it is not, but it's not far off, and it's not something you see from them often. A serious test of the limit. I should mention quickly that the end of Toyota vs Inoue led into a couple of things. First of all, Aja Kong came down in the post-match to both pay a bit of respect and to formally challenge Toyota to the big 27th June rematch, the one where Aja would reclaim the red belt. The second thing is that this match was also set to decide who was going to face Akira Hokuto in the big bout of the year, Destiny at Nippon Budokan. That was set up at the end of the Bridge of Dreams tag, with the idea still being that it would be a 3WA title match. With the result being a draw, Hokuto vs Toyota is signed and set in stone, although ultimately the red belt would not be a feature. As for Kyoko, the summer is largely defined by big tag bouts. She is, after all, currently holding the tag belts with Takako, having won them in a one-night tournament on 21st March. Almost all of their defences involve Toyota. On the 2nd of May, the double Inoues defeated Toyota and Mariko Yoshida in the 2 out of 3 falls at the Korakuen Hall. But right now, we're going to something even bigger. The main event of Queen's Holy Night, the same show where Dynamite Kansai won the title against Aja Kong. It's another 2 out of 3 falls match, and this time Manami Toyota is teaming with Saki Hasegawa. A name that always crops up here and there at this time, whether it's as herself or as alter ego Blizzard Yuki, and one that always comes with a bit of ruefulness. This is someone who really should at one stage have been part of this big battle for the red belt, who should have been in the main event if it weren't for injuries. Still, this is absolutely the main event, a huge night indeed, and one where we're going to get another important beat in the story. The opening blitz sees Toyota and Hasegawa get a quick advantage, beating Kyoko to the punch and hitting a double bulldog, but Kyoko is able to dodge the double splash, followed by a DDT to Hasegawa. Kyoko follows with a lariat, and the Inoues quickly set about isolating Saki. Takako comes in and hits her stalling tombstone twice, complete with a few knees. Such is the dynamic of the double Inoues team. While Kyoko is such a babyface, Takako is as heelish as she is beautiful. Kyoko comes back in and hits her awesome vaulting DDT, and while Hasegawa tries to power back up with chops, she quickly gets run down with another lariat. She finally manages to get out after hitting a kick and a bulldog on Takako, bringing Toyota in. Manami quickly counters Takako and does a huge rolling cradle. Like seriously, there must have been at least 5 go-rounds, and it gets a near fall. Toyota follows with what looks like a stalling piledriver, hitting a few knees of her own to Takako's head, following that with some big drop kicks in the corner. Takako dodges the third one to take back control, hitting another one of her knee-tastic tombstones, and this brings Kyoko back in. She hits some chops and evades a huge springboard dropkick, knowing her rival all too well. It's Toyota's turn to be dizzy, taking a huge giant swing, and Kyoko gets her Dick Dale on with a very cool surfboard variation, posers and all. A nasty camel clutch follows because, as ever, the match just wouldn't be complete if Toyota didn't get stretched. Hasegawa tries in vain to break it up, and now Takako's at it, applying an STF variation to Toyota. Kyoko is soon back in to hit a torture rack backbreaker, continuing the spinal savagery, and following that with a nasty Boston Crab. Toyota finds the ropes, and both Inoues come in for more damage. However, Manami takes them both out with a springboard body attack, allowing Hasegawa to come back in. But when the challengers try to whip Inoue, she responds with her springboard back elbow. As ever, all is nicely poised. Hasegawa tries for her favoured strike, the soul butt, but takes a lariat. However, she is able to hit it at the second time of asking, and Len starts to go to town, hitting 3 huge uenages. Sometimes people can be deceptive, you know. Suddenly the diminutive Hasegawa's chucking Kyoko around like she's coming straight out of Red Hook. Takako interrupts another attempt with some kicks, getting the ire of the crowd. She responds by telling them that they're number 1, but another whip sees Toyota intercept with a double dropkick. From there we head outside and Toyota hits the almighty no-hand somersault plancher, as gorgeous as ever, but a moonsault misses on the inside. We go up top, Toyota trying to intercept Kyoko, but she is ready and she ends up hitting a whopper of a power slam from the top, almost like a proto-emerald flosion. However, Toyota does the bridge out. Toyota gets out of a Niagara attempt, trying for a German. Again, Takako interrupts, but thanks to Hasegawa she is able to slam Kyoko, and the pair hit the double splash for a near fall. Kyoko pushes Hasegawa off, looking to intercept Toyota on the ropes with the big run-up. However, Toyota is waiting for it, and she counters with a huge sunset bomb. And that gets the first fall. The challengers lead the match 1-0, winning the first fall in 14 minutes 11, with Toyota besting Inoue once again. Kyoko still looks in trouble even after a minute of rest, and Toyota wants to quickly wrap this up, attacking straight away and trying for the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. Somehow Kyoko escapes and hits a German suplex, Toyota quickly bringing Hasegawa in so she can wrap it up. And this proves to be a mistake. Hasegawa tries for another uenage, but Inoue escapes, hits a big clothesline, and then hits a huge Niagara driver. Just like that, in a mere 25 seconds, the scores are level. A big burst of energy from a seemingly finished Kyoko secures the second fall, and even though she literally needs to be dragged to the corner in the break, it's as triumphant as such a drag can get. After all, we're going to the decider. Kyoko starts pressing the advantage, pummeling Hasegawa with clotheslines on the ropes for a near fall, and while Saki desperately tries to fight Takako, she gets dumped on her head with 2 backdrops. Takako heals viciously, choking Hasegawa and landing some nasty kicks, but Hasegawa bridges out. Even though the advantage looks to be with the champs following a big lariat from Kyoko, Hasegawa counters another lariat with an uenage. Not yet able to get to Toyota, but a soul butt gives her the chance to make the hot tack. Toyota comes in full of fire, hitting a couple of missile drop kicks to Takako, followed by a German suplex, and then another, this time after Hasegawa gets in a couple of knees. Again, paying back in kind. Toyota gets another near fall with the Manami roll, and Hasegawa returns to apply an abdominal stretch. The challengers are continuing to get their own back, Toyota coming in now to kick Takako, and we do get some rare boos for the Flying Angel. This healing, however, seems to fire up Takako, who slams some elbows into Toyota and then counters a Hasegawa soul butt with a chokeslam. Toyota takes Takako to the outside and Hasegawa looks to dive, but Kyoko hits a huge German from the top and Saki suddenly looks isolated, with Toyota down following an unseen strike from Takako. Damn camera work. Hasegawa survives a backdrop hold and a side suplex, but surely couldn't survive an assisted Niagara driver. However, Toyota just comes in to make the save. Still, she gets put outside again, and Takako's up top. She hits her finisher, the Takako Panic Flying Knee. Somehow though, Hasegawa kicks out. Takako tries it once again, but this time Hasegawa dodges, hits a huge soul butt and brings Toyota in. She tries a splash, but Takako gets her legs up. Just as the champions look to be in the ascendancy, Toyota gets up to boot Takako off the top and hits a huge dropkick to both Inoues. It's all to play for as we get close to the end. Toyota scores with the Japanese Ocean suplex, but this time Takako's managing to just kick out. She gets on top, but Kyoko makes her return, grabs her, and Takako hits a chokeslam off the top rope. This gets a near fall, as does another regular Nodowa. Toyota looks down and out, Kyoko comes back in, sensing the chance to do something special. A whopper of a lariat turns Toyota inside out, but when she goes up top, this time Hasegawa's getting revenge. She grabs Kyoko, puts her on her shoulders, and Toyota hits a doomsday dropkick. Another near fall, and Toyota hits a big moonsault for another. She tries for the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. Kyoko escapes, tries to clothesline, but runs right into a soul butt. Toyota gets her up, hits the big suplex, and Kyoko kicks out. Just as in their May Classic, Kyoko pulls some energy out of thin air to get that shoulder up. Takako comes in for the save as Toyota tries to go up top again, throwing her off, but eventually Toyota counters again, hitting another big missile dropkick. By this stage, Takako and Hasegawa almost seem immaterial, neither combatant having any desire to tag out to them. But again, Takako runs crucial interference on Toyota's attempts to fly with another chokeslam, and when Hasegawa attempts to do similar, she gets smashed by a Kyoko lariat. Kyoko has a huge chance now, getting Toyota up there and hitting the Niagara driver. Kick out! With Hasegawa and Takako fighting in the corner, another Niagara attempt is countered by a roll, but Kyoko escapes, and when Toyota goes up again, Kyoko finally nails the big run-up suplex. The Inoues team up for a huge double super DDT on Toyota. Somehow there is still fight left in the Angel, but at last, with Hasegawa out of the way, we get a huge combination chokeslam and Niagara driver. Finally, Inoue covers, and she gets it. Her first truly decisive big match pinfall on Manami Toyota happens at 28 minutes 45. Kyoko is utterly rapturous at having got the job done at last, whilst Takako, who had such a crucial role to play, can barely stand, hanging off the shoulders of the seconds as the prizes are presented. Unsurprisingly, this was a cracker of a tag match, one of the best in Zenjo's history, really only beaten by a few other stonkers like the Kansai Ozaki and Toyota Yamada bouts. I enjoy how it completely takes out the obviousness of the second fall, which is something that can hurt 2 out of 3 full tag bouts where you just know it's going to a decider. Here the second fall lasts mere seconds, and we just get right back to the big drama of whether Kyoko Inoue can finally get that big pinfall on Manami Toyota. We've already talked about them plenty, of course, especially seeing as we've just seen them wrestle each other for an hour. Both Takako Inoue and Saki Hasegawa deserve a lot of highlighting. Takako in many ways is what makes Double Inoue such a special team, because they are so different from each other. A real good cop bad cop partnership where Takako is more than willing to do all of the dirty work, the major healing, choking, brawling at times. It's a real case of opposites attract. And then there's Saki Hasegawa. This is possibly her best ever performance, and it's a real shame that it's one of her last big ones. Hasegawa just got better and better, a real underdog. She doesn't have the sort of wide-ranging moveset like the likes of Kyoko and Toyota have, but she does everything so effectively, plays such a good face in peril, sells so well. If things worked out differently, again, you could see Hasegawa getting into the main event scene, being that ultimate underdog, someone who'd utterly have the heart of the crowd. But alas, it wasn't to be. Injuries in the end brought Hasegawa's career to a finish. She suffered a bad eye socket injury earlier in 1995 and also suffered rather nasty neck damage in a December 4th 95 match against Kaoru Ito. She decided that she couldn't carry on inflicting any more pain on her body, and on December 10th, 1995, she announced her intention to retire at the age of just 25, doing so on March 31st at 1996's Wrestling Queendom, teaming with Ito against Tomoko Watanabe and LLPW's Michiko Nagashima. All 4 wrestlers were graduates of the 1989 dojo class. And so, we've made it to a pretty big date, the 2nd of September 1995. This was AJW's biggest show of the year, Destiny at the Nippon Budokan, in front of 14,800 people. While there's no real equivalent to last year's Big Egg Universe, this is as close as 95 gets, with a card that once again has several callbacks to the company's history, from the appearance of elder legends such as Lioness Asuka and Jaguar Yokota, to having a big comedy little person match on the card, an exploding deathmatch featuring mini versions of Tiger Jeet Singh and Shoji Nakamaki. There's plenty of young talent too, an opener featuring the best graduates of the 1994 class, including Yoshiko Tamura and Misei Genki, spots for other hot prospects like Chaparita Asari and Ria Tamada, and so on. And of course there's the big main event, Manami Toyota vs Akira Hokuto, a match which needs no hype, and one we'll be covering in the next part. The other big singles bouts also don't need much. We've got a massive powerhouse affair in which Aja Kong gets the better of her former Jungle Jack partner Bison Kimura, and then we have the match we're about to cover. We started this video with Kyoko Inoue challenging her senpai, Bull Nakano, for the WWF Women's title. She lost, and she asked Bull not to disband their stable, Gokumonto, until she had beaten her. And tonight, she'll have another chance. The semi-main event sees Kyoko Inoue taking on Bull Nakano, with a history that, for Inoue, goes all the way back to the beginning. Nakano has always been Kyoko's mentor, and now it's time to see if, finally, the pupil can overcome the master. Right from the off, Kyoko needs to not accept the hand that Bull offers. This is no time for camaraderie. Instead we get the quick assault, a couple of big clotheslines from Kyoko and some chops, but Bull soon replies with 2 lariats of her own. Kyoko loves a lariat, but no one in Joshi throws it like Bull. Nakano works a sleeper for a bit, even catching Kyoko right back into it when she tries for the springboard back elbow, cinching it in even harder and turning it into a dragon sleeper variation. When they do get up, however, Kyoko surprises with the head scissors for 2, and from there we get some cool surfboard action, followed by a camel clutch. Kyoko kind of makes a point, jogging around the ring as Bull tries to recover. She's indisputably the better athlete. However, Bull reverses a suplex for one of her own. She might not yet be the better wrestler. Bull tries the Scorpion Crosslock, later opting for an axe kick and camel clutch of her own, turning that into a dragon clutch, and then doing the nasty spot where she ties Kyoko up in the ropes for a couple of clotheslines. That's just awesome, frankly. Just when the veteran thinks she's in control, however, Kyoko's always ready to fight with a couple of double chops, and Bull needs another lariat to put her down. But to no avail, as another whip sees Kyoko hit her springboard back elbow. As is often the case, we're very evenly matched. Eventually we get a double lariat, not surprising considering the frequency of the strike. Back up now, and Kyoko reverses a whip into the corner, hitting the vaulting DDT and a slam, but then Bull dodges the one-up back elbow. Bull hits a powerbomb and looks to go up top, but Kyoko's up. While she doesn't get the one-up suplex, she does knock Bull to the outside. On the floor there's a run into the guardrail, and Kyoko executes another vaulting DDT. Initially it doesn't come off, but Kyoko does nail it and it's pretty damn cool. We get something cooler still though. Bull does a reversal, clotheslining Kyoko over the rail, and looks to use the table for a suplex. However, Kyoko reverses that, and she does a suplex off the table. That's awesome. Not exactly something you see every day, and she follows that up with the big old lariat, running across the Budokan floor. We get back into the ring and Kyoko tries to go up top, but Bull finds some energy. She intercepts, looks for a suplex of her own, but then Kyoko reverses the position and ends up hitting a big body slam off the top, followed by a missile dropkick. Just how good is she, huh? Kyoko senses victory, now trying for the Niagara driver, but she's not there yet. Bull gets out and counters with a reverse DDT and follows that with the old rope-draped DDT, the Randy Orton spot. We go outside again, Bull launching herself at Kyoko, showing she can still move fast if she wants, and she positions herself up top, looking for a dropkick, but she can't move faster than Kyoko. She suddenly bursts up and hits the one-up suplex. Again, Kyoko goes for the Niagara driver, and this time she pays for it dearly. Bull lifts her up and hits Bull's Poseidon. Bull goes up top, looking to finish herself, and she pays for it when Kyoko moves out of the way. Kyoko quickly takes advantage, hoisting her up and hitting the Niagara driver. However, it's only a near fall. Still a ways to go. Bull pushes Kyoko to the ropes to prevent a second driver, and when Kyoko tries another springboard, she's ready, pushing her off to the outside. Bull hits a DDT on the floor and then does something that would finish a lot of people. Not one, but two guillotine leg drops from the apron to the floor. Kyoko looks like she's out, and the referee's counting. The crowd wills her on, and then, shockingly, Bull herself is on the house mic to will her on, testing her, telling her to get back in. Kyoko does get back in at 19, but it doesn't look like there's much left. Bull slams her, goes up top, hits the guillotine leg drop, and Kyoko kicks out at 1. Two-contastic spirit is shown, but Bull's in no mood for it. She gets right back up there and hits another big leg drop, and Kyoko kicks out at 1 again, as if the pain's invigorating, sends energy coursing through the body, makes her feel alive. She gets knocked down again, this time with a discus lariat, and Bull looks to truly bring this to an end. She goes up top, and she hits the somersault leg drop. Kyoko kicks out. Not at 1, but she freaking kicks out. This is a move that has finished everyone. Nobody kicks out of the somersault leg drop. Sort of having a cage at hand to drop the leg from, what else can Bull do? The crowd roars Kyoko on as she's slammed again, and Bull has an idea. She goes up top to try a frickin' moonsault, and decisively Kyoko moves away, applying the Spider Nest STF. Bull won't quit, but this is one painful as hell move, especially considering all the flying Bull's been doing and that big crash and burn. Kyoko senses the moment once again, calling to the crowd, picking Bull up. Again Bull goes to the ropes, but Kyoko's now hitting some big elbows and a step-up enziguri. She goes again, she hoists her up on the shoulders, hits the Niagara driver, and defiantly Bull kicks out once again. Still, there's not much more she can do. Kyoko will not be denied. She goes in once more, lifts her mentor up, takes her round the ring, brings her crashing down. No, not yet. Finally though, the moment is at hand. Kyoko at last hits a third Niagara driver, and this time Bull cannot kick out. At 21 minutes 02, Kyoko Inoue successfully pins Bull Nakano, getting the victory over her senpai. Bull took a lot of punishment and certainly dished out plenty herself, but Kyoko was simply not to be denied. It was a pretty great match too. I'd say that this was a shade better than their match from March, with a fair bit more of the old emotions running in there, especially when Bull's encouraging Kyoko to get back into the ring, and when we do get to that final stretch. For Bull Nakano, it is certainly yet another fine showing, especially considering that, although she's only 27, this is pretty close to the end of her wrestling career. You can kind of tell at points just how much everything hurts for Bull. This is someone who, as she mentioned in an interview she did with Kyoko, went to the doctor with pains in her hip, worried it might be broken. The doctor said that no, the hip wasn't broken. In fact, it broke a year ago, but now it's all sort of stuck back together. And yeah, there's points where Bull is slow, where the pain is clear, things she simply can't do anymore. And yet she still goes all out here for Kyoko. An incredible effort, and I would say it's the last essential match in a career of one of the all-time greats. We do get an emotional post-match between Kyoko, Nakano and Watanabe, thinking that the end of Gokumontor is coming. Although as it turns out, not quite yet. Who steps into the ring but frickin' Lioness Asuka? Asuka perhaps still has some old demons to fight, wants one last crack at an old rival. and before Gokumonto rides off into the sunset, she wants that chance. This leads into a 6-woman tag match that, unfortunately, isn't available for us to watch. The Gokumonto team of Nakano, Kyoko and Watanabe faced the legendary team of Asuka, Jaguar Yokota and Bison Kimura at Korakuen Hall on the 4th of October. Gokumonto would come out winners, and then they'd finally disband, bringing an official end to a quite legendary stable, the house that Dump Matsumoto originally built. With this done, well, it's a good time to end this part, as we need to switch focus. We need to get back to the Manami Toyota Road to cover a match that we've been hyping up for quite some time, the main event of Destiny, the super fight against the Dangerous Queen. There's also the small matter of a Grand Prix final, a red belt that she needs to reclaim, an eternal rival who's always waiting, as well as how this all factors into the state of Zenjo's business. As we head into 1996, we'll certainly be looking more into what's happening behind the scenes, as it's a time when, well, certain cracks start to become a bit more visible, a thought that the foundations of the Matsunaga's business are perhaps not as solid as they would appear to be. This is all to come, but hopefully you've enjoyed this second part, and until the next time, bye for now. It's time to go back to the Manami Toyota Road. We left her as she was still waiting in the wings, looking for the opportunity to get the red belt back, and on the verge of one of the biggest weekends of her life. And seeing as we left the Kyoko Inoue Road with her victory over Bull Nakano in the semi-main event of Destiny on 2nd September, we shouldn't waste too much time. After all, Manami's big match is next. And so, let's get it on. We should quickly summarise where Manami Toyota's at, specifically her performance in the year's AJW Grand Prix. After drawing with Mima Shimoda in that classic first match we covered in part 1, Manami Toyota would largely run the red zone of the Grand Prix, the only other blip being a loss to Reggie Bennett, who even in this glittering year already scored one big victory over Toyota in 1995. In May, she won the IWA World title that Toyota had held for 1,115 days, further cementing her place as AJW's top, well, basically only foreign talent. Toyota's 11 points is enough to get to the final at the Korakuen Hall on the 3rd of September, where she'll face the 1994 Grand Prix winner, Yumiko Hotta. And yes, this will happen the very next day after Destiny and her super fight at the Nippon Budokan against Akira Hokuto. So yeah, it's a rather busy couple of days to say the least. Victory against Hokuto is, of course, something huge. Even if the Grand Prix comes with a title shot for the winner, this would be an even bigger prize. Now, while it would be remiss to say that Akira Hokuto is a star purely of the past and not the present, she carries the torch that Manami Toyota wants. Red belt or not, she won't consider herself to be on top until she defeats the Dangerous Queen. Hokuto, never one to shy away in the entrance, comes out like she's just got married to Satan, veiled and dressed entirely in black. Toyota comes out and decides that she doesn't want to waste time with mind games. She very quickly tries to get the drop on Hokuto, but Akira's ready for it. She dodges Toyota, who goes flying out of the ring, and Hokuto, still dressed in black, does a freaking senton on her from the top rope in a quite stunning visual, and an immediate counter for anyone who might think that the Dangerous Queen isn't still the best there is in Joshi. The fireworks have already started, and the bell hasn't even rung. We don't need the usual introductions. We know who's here and what's at stake. In the ring, Hokuto offers Toyota her hand, and while Toyota takes it, it's a ruse. She's immediately pulled in for a backdrop. Toyota quickly responds by reversing a whip and hitting a dropkick off the top. While an attempt at the no-hands plunger is quickly blocked by Hokuto, Toyota sends her to the outside again and hits the missile dropkick from the top to the floor. Unsurprisingly, these two aren't in the mood to mess around. Back in now, and Hokuto hits a wrist clutch suplex, trying to slow things down with a stranglehold and a scorpion deathlock. Hokuto continues with an armbar, a crossface and a camel clutch, the usual business of trying to wear Toyota down and stretch her out, but the camel clutch comes with an added pull of the hair to really get the stretch to maximum, and she also applies a dragon clutch. Toyota gets some momentum back on an Irish whip using the springboard body attack and then hitting a huge running dropkick on Hokuto. Some kicks take Hokuto down again, and Toyota hits 2 more big running dropkicks in the corner, followed by a butterfly suplex for a 2 count. The match gets spicier still with some mounted slaps from Toyota, followed by an incredible hairlock and whipping takedown, and some big kicks and stomps to the grounded Hokuto. But the Dangerous Queen's own response comes by reversing a clothesline and hitting a German suplex, followed by a nasty reverse brainbuster. Hokuto applies the Scorpion Deathlock again, really cinching it in as hard as possible, but of course Toyota's not going to give in. It appears to be agony, but eventually Toyota finds the ropes. Hokuto tries to go to ground for a whip reversal, but gets stomped. From here Toyota manages to lock in the rolling cradle for a near fall. Toyota keeps going with a slam and a moonsault, giving as good as she gets. This is a case where both wrestlers refuse at any point to show that what the other's doing is in any way hurting them. Hokuto reverses another whip, this time trying for the Dangerous Queen bomb. Toyota's able to reverse that and nearly roll her up, but a Manami roll attempt is countered with a powerbomb. Hokuto hits a reverse Hurricane Rana for a near fall and makes her first attempt at the Northern Lights bomb. However, Toyota counters with the Japanese Ocean Suplex for a near fall of her own. Toyota makes her own attempt at the Japanese Ocean Cyclone, but Hokuto reverses and this time, she hits the DQ bomb. There's simply nothing between these two. Hokuto hits another vicious move, this time a Fisherman Buster, but Toyota makes the big bridge out of the pin, and from there Hokuto tries something new, the Stranglehold Gamma, a move that the Dangerous Queen has adopted from her new husband. It's a desperate position to be in, but Toyota just about manages to get a foot on the rope, and when Hokuto then tries to go up top, she's still utterly defiant, catching her. She gets kicked away, but Toyota's able to dodge Hokuto's attempt at a missile dropkick. She tries for the Cyclone again, but nearly gets pinned with a victory roll. Toyota tries the moonsault again, but this time Hokuto gets the knees up. However, Toyota is there again with a reversal, hitting a kick, a springboard arm drag, keeping hold of the arm, and locking in the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. However, it doesn't get the pin. With Hokuto having survived one of Toyota's best shots, things get even more heated, and the action heads outside. Toyota gets the table, puts Hokuto on there, and hits a big splash off the top. Quite nasty seeing as, of course, the table doesn't break. Still, it does more damage to Hokuto than it does to Manami. Toyota tries to continually assault with the no-hand somersault plancher, but Hokuto moves out of the way, and now she wants to use that table herself. She pulls Toyota to another one, gets her up on top and hits a vicious sheer drop powerbomb. The thump is quite sickening, but that's nothing. Hokuto is at a point where she doesn't care how much damage she does to herself in order to take Toyota out. She puts her on the table, goes up top, and hits an absolutely hideous senton onto Toyota. If the ref were counting, this match would be over. However, he's more concerned with seeing if both of these incredible wrestlers are okay. Toyota and Hokuto are almost damn near motionless for some time. Seemingly they have both hit a breaking point. With the seconds seeing to them all away, they slowly stir, eventually just pulling each other to the ring, barely. This is a point we saw when Hokuto faced Shinobu Kandori, where both have nothing left, holding on to each other as they get up, knowing that the next move, whoever it comes from, is surely decisive, and with one last bolt of energy, it's Toyota that makes it. And more than that, it's Hokuto's own move. Out of nowhere, Manami Toyota hits the Northern Lights bomb. Manami slowly struggles up while Hokuto lays flat out, but she knows that just one is not going to be enough. She picks Hokuto up and she hits a second Northern Lights bomb. 1, 2, 3. In 20 minutes 43, Manami Toyota pinned Akira Hokuto, and she did so with Hokuto's most powerful weapon. The effect of the match is clear. Even while Toyota gradually gets up after the bell, ultimately hoisted on top of the second's shoulders, Hokuto is still on the ground. Indeed, she's still there even after Toyota's left, barely moved. However, she will not be stretchered out of here. Finally, Mima Shimoda, her LCO partner in crime, is able to get her up and carry her out of the arena on her back. It is something of an emotional scene backstage as, at last, the Dangerous Queen stirs and finally manages to stand up on her own. Well, this is certainly one hell of a match. There's no doubt that it lives up to the billing. You may well have expected something longer than a 20-minute match, a more traditional epic, but this is another one of those matches that never stops moving, and these two don't know how to go another way. Both Toyota and Hokuto are famed for risking absolutely everything in order to get to the ring, and in the end this becomes a big story of the match. They're both androids, and eventually one of them will break. In the end, Hokuto was the one who risked too much with that monstrous senton on the table, and this is perhaps the definitive example of unbreakable Japanese table that there is in the whole of pro res. There are some cool details in the drama. With Hokuto still being CMLL Women's Champ, I love that Toyota sets up the Cyclone Suplex by using Lucha against Hokuto, hitting that big arm drag and holding on. That and simply all the hate that suddenly flows through the pair of them. Toyota has to channel a certain viciousness here that doesn't always come out, but sure is effective when it does. The finish itself is quite incredible, probably one of the best stolen finisher endings in wrestling history. It's a perfect touch for Toyota to take the torch from Hokuto in that way, using the Northern Lights bomb. Just as Aja Kong did to Bull Nakano years back, finishing her with the guillotine leg drop. And from here, the move becomes a major finisher for Toyota, renamed the Japanese Ocean Queen Bee Bomb. There's a bit of interesting detail that comes from the report on the card in The Observer. Of course, the match got 5 stars from Big Dave, saying that right up until hours before the show, Akira Hokuto was actually booked to win this match. It's certainly not unfathomable for Hokuto to have won. After all, there's some things that even a legend like the Dangerous Queen hasn't done, with the biggest of them all being never winning the red belt. However, Hokuto herself called an audible and did the job, apparently figuring that it would make more sense for Toyota to win because she's the star who's out there every night, while Hokuto's only coming in as a star for the big shows at present. And well, she certainly sold like hell for Toyota, that's for sure, even more so in the post-match. The match is a damn great one, of course. Again, seeing as this was Zenjo's most hyped match for 1995, the rave notice as it got meant that Toyota vs Hokuto was another one of those big gateway bouts into Joshi for a lot of fans in the West, similar to the wars that Manami had with Aja Kong or the Hokuto vs Shinobu Kandori Dream Slam match. Again, it totally lived up to the hype. Not a single second wasted, not one quarter given. One of the best torch passing matches you are ever likely to see. And just 24 hours after her incredible victory against Akira Hokuto, Manami Toyota's off to Korakuen Hall for the Japan Grand Prix final, against a pretty familiar opponent. Yumiko Hotta is a 1985 graduate, 4 years older than Toyota, and the two already have quite a long history against each other in this tournament alone. One of Toyota's first big achievements, in 1990, saw her defeat Hotta in the final to win the Grand Prix. Hotta would come close again in 1993, only to fall short in the final against Akira Hokuto, but 1994 saw her take the GP in a league format, scoring 13 points to Toyota's 12. Hotta's been in Zenjo for quite some time, having first made waves all the way back in 1986 when she was chosen as the young new tag partner of Chigusa Nagayo. But whereas usually a 28-year-old in AJW would be winding down or even retired by this point, Hotta's doing the opposite, starting a path in MMA and becoming stronger than ever in singles competition, one of the fiercest strikers and competitors in all of Joshi. Not exactly someone you want to face 24 hours after conquering Hokuto, but a chance at the red belt is up for grabs. After the initial handshake, we quickly see what Hotta's plan is going to be. She attacks Toyota in the corner with kicks, although she soon gets caught and dumped over the top, where Toyota hits the dropkick to the floor, and from there Toyota wraps Hotta in the ropes and hits a few kicks of her own. Toyota hits some more shots, but a striking battle may not be a thing to start with Hotta. She powers through, hitting a few more kicks, and she's soon teeing off on the ground at Toyota. So yeah, we may not see the usual load of stretching that we've come to expect in a Toyota match. Hotta's goal is seemingly to kick the Flying Angel's head off, putting those educated feet to good use in classic WWE 2K fashion, with hits all over the shop. Toyota manages to reply with some big boots, taking Hotta to the ropes. Hotta replies with an elbow, but an Irish whip sees Toyota score with a somewhat sketchy springboard. Ugly, but it gets the job done. Toyota hits a couple of missile drop kicks and tries for the butterfly suplex, but Hotta reverses with a back body drop, followed by a pile driver, and from there she applies a half crab. Bit of stretching can't hurt after all. I mean, unless you're Toyota, obviously. Toyota finds the ropes, but Hotta quickly kicks her and reapplies the move, stretching it right out before deciding to go back to the strikes. She puts Toyota in the tree of woe and hits a nasty spinning heel kick, and a camel clutch follows that. Toyota tries to recover with a dropkick off the ropes, but this merely enrages Hotta, who quickly gets up to land another big headshot. Those strikes are really making the difference. Toyota desperately tries to land some palm strikes, but Hotta replies with a nasty flurry of her own, and at this point she is showing just why she's the holder of the Grand Prix crown. Toyota gets dumped out of the ring, but Hotta's not usually one for an aerial assault. Instead, she holds the centre, waiting for Toyota to come and try again. They struggle once more, Hotta showing her strength and continuing to kick away, but a whip gets reversed and Toyota's able to use the rolling cradle, sending Hotta all around for a near fall. However, Toyota doesn't get the moonsault this time. Hotta moves out of the way, whips Toyota to the corner and hits another big spinning heel kick. Toyota dodges a second one and goes up top. Hotta tries to intercept but gets pushed down and hit with the missile dropkick to the back of the head, Manami showing how stiff she can be in response. The Manami roll once again proves foolhardy. Hotta counters with a powerbomb and looks for the Tiger Driver, but Manami reverses with a backslide for the closest near fall yet. Toyota tries to go off the top, but ends up in a flying nothing and gets hit by a kick. From here, Hotta hits 2 Tiger Drivers, getting close each time. Hotta takes Toyota up top, going for a big straightjacket suplex. However, Toyota shifts weight and hits a body attack for a near fall of her own. Hotta evades a cyclone attempt but gets kicked off and Toyota hits the no-hand somersault plunger, taking out both Hotta and her seconds. Toyota tries a splash on a table, but Hotta gets her feet up. You would think Toyota would shy away from the table after last night, but of course, she doesn't. Back in the ring, Hotta hits a huge top rope German suplex. Toyota somehow survives, but surely she can't have much left. Hotta lands more nasty kicks on Toyota, finishing up with another spinning heel kick, and then takes Toyota up for a nasty top rope straightjacket suplex. Amazingly, Toyota kicks out, and Hotta's understandably exasperated. She signals that the end is near. Toyota escapes the first pyramid driver attempt, but takes a Pele kick for her trouble. At the second time of asking, Toyota evades it again, this time getting a near fall with a victory roll, and then gets close again with a springboard sunset flip. Now Toyota looks to finish herself, but Hotta evades the cyclone. Toyota runs the ropes and Hotta tries to reverse into a crucifix powerbomb, but Toyota escapes and this time she hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. But this time it's Hotta's turn for a big kick out. Both are slow to get up, but it's Hotta who makes it up first. She grabs Toyota, locks the arms, and she finally hits the pyramid driver. And yet, Toyota is still not beaten. Hotta's right at the brink now, surely about to claim her second Grand Prix. She takes Toyota up top, looking for a second big straightjacket superplex, and just as she's getting up there, Toyota backflips out, catching Hotta utterly off guard. From there she locks Hotta in, and she hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, and that's the match. In 23 minutes 39, Toyota pins Hotta and wins her second Japan Grand Prix. There's plenty of respect in the post-match, a firm handshake with Hotta raising the hand of the winner. Yes, it's another brilliant match. I mean, what a shocker, right? Yumiko Hotta, while she's had a long and glittering career, can be a little underrated when compared to the other stars of mid-90s Joshi, and this is one of her absolute best bouts. She's an imperious ass-kicker here, throwing those incredibly stiff kicks all the way, showing just how damn tough she is. In many ways, she is the Joshi Pro-Res equivalent to Toshiaki Kawada, as they do both have quite similar styles based on expert strikes and superior conditioning. It took a lot for Toyota to guts out this one, especially considering what she went through 24 hours previously. While the match with Hokuto doesn't necessarily factor into the story of this bout, it can't help but be in the back of your mind, if only to show off her own incredible toughness. To have such a great and taxing match on the Saturday, then go ahead and main event again on the Sunday in another epic bout. It's certainly a worthy Grand Prix final, that's for sure. And of course, the victory means that sometime in the near future, Manami Toyota will get her shot at reclaiming the red belt. Now that she's beaten Akira Hokuto, she needs that final piece of the puzzle to truly take her throne as the ace of Zenjo. The next title challengers are decided by placings in the Japan Grand Prix. Manami Toyota, Yumiko Hotta, and third place finisher Takako Inoue are all guaranteed a match for the belt through their performance. As it happens, it's Takako Inoue who gets the first go at conquering Dynamite Kansai on the 31st of October, with this match taking place at a JWP show at the Furitsu Gym in Osaka. The pair have a stunning match and Takako really comes close to winning that belt, but Kansai ultimately overcomes Takako following a nasty backdrop driver, a typically vicious head kick, and the Splash Mountain. Manami Toyota is next in line, and she takes Dynamite Kansai on at the main event of another big show, 4th of December's Monday Night Sensation, which sees Zenjo take over Tokyo's fabled Ryogoku Kokugikan, or Sumo Hall. AJW put on a particularly excellent show for the occasion, complete with another match that we'll be seeing later, and all the stars, including Akira Hokuto, who wrestles despite blowing out her knee on the November 27th WCW Monday Nitro. Kansai and Toyota have previously torn the house down in some legendary tag matches, teaming with Mayumi Yazaki and Toshio Yamada respectively, and as has often been the case, Manami Toyota does have some disadvantages going into this one. Kansai's got the size advantage, and she's got some of the deadliest strikes in the game, her title victory over Aja Kong being more than enough evidence of that. Still, no mountain is too tall for the Flying Angel, and this is her big chance to take the Ace's throne. Toyota quickly starts with elbows, hitting a running dropkick on Kansai's arm following a whip, and another one to send the champ outside. However, the no-hands plunger doesn't come off, with Toyota flying right into a kick. Kansai is quick to power Toyota up for a huge backdrop and follow that up with head kicks. If Toyota didn't have a headache after the Hotta bout, she's definitely going to have one after this match with Kansai, win or lose. A pile driver is next, and Kansai goes for a sleeper, soon turning that into a rear naked choke, less interested in stretching Manami than she is in knocking her out. More nasty shots soon follow with Toyota in the ropes, and Kansai does trap her in a quick half crab. However, once they're out of there, Toyota is able to reverse a whip and hit the rolling cradle. Some people don't like this move as I recall, but I do, as I think it's kind of similar in effect to a giant swing. Toyota hits some of her own kicks on Kansai in the ropes, even doing some Kong-esque slaps beforehand, and she follows that with a couple of nasty running drop kicks, the second with Kansai draped upside down over the ropes. However, a run in the corner is countered by another roundhouse from Kansai, who naturally follows with a few more stiff strikes, teeing off on Toyota to take her down and then applying a Scorpion Deathlock. Toyota finds the ropes but quickly gets dragged back, with Kansai putting her foot right on her head before applying a half crab and an STF, the champ not finishing the stretching until she's satisfied with it. Kansai continues to throw brutal kicks, but Toyota's trying to guts them out as she comes up. However, she gets knocked down again, and Kansai doesn't let up on them, perhaps warning Toyota that it would be best to stay down. Once again, Kansai attempts a rear naked choke, cinching it right in. Initially, this looks pretty bleak for Toyota, but she is ultimately able to struggle and find the rope with her foot. The champion's dominance continues. A clothesline in the corner and an attempt at a reversal from Toyota fails, resulting in another short-arm clothesline for a near fall. Kansai looks for a lariat, but Toyota's finally able to counter, hitting a German suplex. And with Kansai still grounded, Toyota tries to strike as hard as she can with several running dropkicks to the face. Unfortunately, Kansai is ready for a third, and this time she hits the lariat. Toyota manages to shift her weight on a backdrop attempt for a near fall, but, well, again the Manami roll doesn't work. Toyota keeps trying it on people, and keeps getting powerbombed. Kansai goes up top, and while Toyota intercepts, Kansai repeats a trick she used against Aja Kong. She jumps down to the apron and lands another hefty roundhouse kick from there, knocking Toyota down. Kansai whips Toyota in, but Toyota responds with one of her most beautiful springboard sunset flips ever. Utterly freaking perfect, although it doesn't win the match. Kansai gets kicked down when she tries to go to the top again, and Toyota hits the dropkick to the floor, quickly rolling the champ back in and hitting the moonsault, using all her speed. However, a cyclone attempt fails, Kansai responding with even more deadly kicks, and the ref has no choice but to start a count. The challenger just about makes it up at 8, managing to dodge a lariat. However, Kansai dodges a strike herself, hitting a vicious backdrop. Kansai calls for Splash Mountain, and while Toyota is able to struggle out, she still gets hit with a regular crucifix powerbomb, followed by another backdrop. The champ must feel that the end is surely near. Kansai puts Toyota up top, looking for the big one, the die-hard Kansai. However, Toyota escapes, pushes her off, and hits the Enzui missile dropkick, finding energy from somewhere. She tries the cyclone again, but once again eats a couple of kicks. It's not enough to stop Toyota though. Another whip reversal results in a regular Japanese Ocean suplex for a near fall, and this time Manami's able to follow that up with the Japanese Ocean cyclone suplex. However, Kansai just kicks out. Toyota goes for it again, but this time Kansai reverses, sweeps Toyota, and hits another head kick on the ground. A second, even worse one is similar to that which basically finished Takako Inoue. Toyota is seemingly finished herself. Kansai picks up the dead weight, gets her up across the shoulders, parades her around, and hits Splash Mountain. But no, Manami Toyota is not finished. Kansai is hardly the first one to be baffled at the challenger's incredible resolve, but she still has something even more decisive up her sleeve. As Toyota gets up, Kansai throws a couple more nasty head kicks, wanting her to stay down, the ref counting again. This time, Toyota is up at 7 thanks to the ropes, and Kansai tries for Splash Mountain again. This time, Toyota counters with a victory roll, but it's only 2. With this, Kansai is determined to end the challenger's resistance. She hits a couple more headshots, and once again gets Toyota up top, looking for diehard Kansai. She seemingly has it locked in, but just as she goes to hit it, Toyota counters with a massive Frankensteiner and rolls Kansai up. And just like that, in 22 minutes 37, Manami Toyota has defeated Dynamite Kansai to win the WWA World title, the red belt, for the second time, becoming the 10th woman to achieve the feat of winning the top title more than once. Kansai is consoled by Cutie Suzuki, and Toyota is awarded the spoils, although an ice pack is understandably never far away from her head. This match's dynamic was quite similar to the sort that Toyota has with Kong, although the strikes of Kansai added another dynamic. The head kicks from the champ played even more of a part here than they did in the GP final against Hotta, especially with Kansai looking at times for the knockout to really show her supremacy. Again, the result is quite a magical one. I think by now the big match Manami Toyota formula is very clear, especially against a bigger and more powerful opponent like Kansai, eventually eking out that victory against all odds. but it works so damn well, and it has quite a satisfying ending, with Manami Toyota winning the belt and capping off this utterly incredible year, the best in her whole career, by being officially recognised as the ace of Zenjo. Manami Toyota was simply untouchable in 1995. We've seen that all the way through against several big opponents in singles and tag competition. There's no one else on her level at this time, similar to Akira Hokuto in 93 or Aja Kong in 94. Perhaps the only other wrestler in Japan who is close to this level of performance is the other woman that we're covering. And of course, we've got plenty more to look at from Kyoko Inoue in the fourth and final part. As we come to the end of 1995, it is simple enough to say that if you are immediately looking for a reason why so many think that Manami Toyota is the greatest woman to ever lace up a pair of wrestling boots, then this year is the place where you need to start looking. Manami Toyota's last 30 matches of her career best year happen in one night, that being Christmas Day at the Korakuen Hall, where she has an exhibition kumite, 31-minute matches against the rest of AJW. It's a pretty exciting spectacle to be sure, being 30 minutes of total non-stop action, if you'll pardon the pun. And well, it's a good background for something that we need to talk about. As we head into 1996, we should talk a little about just where business stands at Zenjo. 1995 certainly wasn't as good a year as 1994 was, even leaving out things such as there not being a big Tokyo Dome show. Certainly Wrestling Queendom was on the whole a bit of a disappointment when it came to gate performance, and the performance of Wrestle Marine Pad was also down on previous years, although other big shows such as Destiny and Monday Night Sensation were very strong performers, and it still on balance looked like a good year. 1996 though is where cracks do start to become a little more visible. One thing that changes is that events held at the company's home base, Korakuen Hall, are no longer guaranteed to sell out. In previous years, Zenjo could happily bank on 2,500 there every time, but they don't get that anymore, and this kind of plays out all around the country. AJW runs a lot of shows. They don't really have the tour then break schedule that a company like All Japan has. They're just always on tour, pushing hard nearly every night. To put it in numbers, Zenjo ran 246 shows in 1995, while New Japan ran 160 and All Japan ran 137. That's not far off of WWF numbers, at a time when the Fed's tour schedule was infamously brutal. WWF obviously has a hell of a lot more travel, seeing as they're going worldwide, but they had a total of 278 shows in 95 according to History of WWE, and Zenjo only have 32 less shows while also working a more intense style than that of mid-90s WWF. However, Zenjo's audiences are diminishing. The nationwide recession is playing a part here for sure, but honestly a big part of it is the product, a similar issue to what All Japan had as the 90s went on. The same faces have been on top for a pretty long while, and as great as they are, even if they're amongst the best ever, even the likes of Aja Kong peak in popularity eventually. The top stars in Zenjo are starting to become overly familiar because the same people are always main eventing, and it does get to a stage where people want to see a few newer faces up top. But honestly, there's not a whole lot coming up behind them. Talent burns out in AJW pretty quickly, either through fatigue or just becoming broken down by injury. Usually by the time we do get to the by now pretty grey issue of mandatory retirement age, the wrestlers are basically done anyway a lot of the time. As far as that age goes, by this time it wasn't a thing when it came to the main event seniors. Aja Kong turned 26 in 1996, Kyoko and Takako Inoue both turned 27, Manami Toyota would be 25, Yumiko Hotta going up to 29, and there weren't any signs of these guys stopping or being gradually de-pushed. Still, if you weren't on that level, you may well still be gone by the time you reach around 26, perhaps even earlier, or there wasn't going to be much hope of Zenjo pushing you further. The age limit isn't necessarily on the records, but in a sense it's still there, a sort of belief that there couldn't be such a thing as a late bloomer in wrestling, or that there shouldn't be. Just for example, Suzuka Manami, who retired in '95, a month after her 26th birthday, may possibly have had more to give as opposed to just being a mid-card stepping stone, which is basically where she was at that point with no hope of going higher, but unfortunately, we'll never know. Anyway, all of this is something that AJW may well regret right now, seeing as it's gradually becoming harder to attract people to come and train in Zenjo at all. The dojo classes nowadays just aren't very big. This is a big issue I alluded to previously. The problem when a Joshi Promotions audience has changed considerably and now primarily consists of male wrestling fans. Now sure, they're mainly here for the talent and not the titillation, but that's not the issue. In the heyday of the Crush Gals and Gokakadome, when Zenjo was the biggest thing going, literally thousands of girls applied to join the dojo every year, the result being several classes that produced multiple Hall of Fame level wrestlers in the second half of the 80s. But when those days ended, the schoolgirls disappeared overnight, and they pretty much never came back. Talent does still come through the dojo, but the classes are now very small compared to what they were because girls by and large don't watch AJW anymore, they're only diminishing in size with each passing year, and so each year brings less graduates. It's hard enough to graduate from the dojo, and harder still to then be a part of that environment for any length of time, so we're really not getting as many folks come up from the rookie classes compared to a few years ago. The standard hasn't dropped, of course, nor should it. 90s pro res training is monstrously hard, and that's true everywhere, not just AJW. It is simply a case of less girls in, less wrestlers out. Now that's not to say that there aren't great wrestlers coming through still. 1996 graduates do include Momo Nakanishi and Nane Takahashi, for example, but there are a lot less of them. So, what's going to happen when the likes of Kong, Toyota and Kyoko Inoue become as broken as the likes of Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto, when they just simply can't go anymore? Who comes after them? Attempts to create new stars aren't working. Zenjo returned to the Budokan for 2 nights in August of '96 with Discover New Heroine, which consisted of 2 tournaments. A tag team tournament where seniors paired up with juniors that was ultimately won by the JWP team of Dynamite Kansai and Tomoko Kazumi, better known as Azumi Hyuga, beating Aja Kong and Yoshiko Tamura, in a pretty damn good final that does feature 2 great young talents who would go on to be shining lights in the Dark Ages, as well as this thing called the U-Top tournament, where pro wrestlers and martial artists faced each other in shoot matches. No, really. Yes, this was a couple of years before WWF's Brawl for All. Hell, AJW has something of an odd relationship in general with shoot wrestling. There were matches, not so much in the mid-90s but in the late 80s and early 90s, mostly curtain jerk bouts featuring juniors, where while the moves were normal, the pins were shoots. You do all you can to pin the other wrestler, and if you win, well, you win. Lose? Well, you don't get paid. The idea from the Matsunaga brothers, who did have legit shoot backgrounds, was that this tested the athleticism of the juniors, and it's talked about by Takako Inoue in her interview with Bull, translated by Moscow Disco. Pretty freaking wild, to say the least. Ridiculous. Unfair. It surely sounds like something that must be kayfabe when it's mentioned, but by all accounts it was not, and the shoot background of the Matsunagas kind of explains this, as well as a whole bunch of the MMA related stuff you find on Zenjo shows, including U-Top. Anyway, the first round consisted of pro wrestlers against martial artists, mainly kickboxers who couldn't do much on the ground, and while Yoko Takahashi, Reggie Bennett and Lioness Asuka were involved, the tournament was basically built around Yumiko Hotta. The U-Top was made to really establish her as an ultra ass kicker, seeing as she'd always been pushed as one of AJW's most legit talents due to her strong karate background. There is no doubt that Hotta can fight, but something like this, well, it comes with risks. Hotta gets to the final after defeating kickboxer Valerie Viet in the first round and quickly dispatching Lioness Asuka in the semis, and then in the final, well, she loses to Razina Elena, the most legit of the martial arts quartet, a Russian judoka who submits her in around 12 minutes. This was bad, and AJW learnt from their mistake by repeating it exactly. Hotta gets a rematch against Alina in December, and guess what? She loses again, this time in 4.5 minutes. To say that this really doesn't help Hotta all that much is an understatement. Anyway, Lee's new heroine Budokan cards were a flop. They didn't even come close to filling half of the Budokan, they didn't really make any new stars, and it shows that Zenjo's position was becoming a bit precarious. And of course, there is also the elephant in the room, the thing that in the West people generally didn't know about at all yet. The state of the Matsunaga brothers' other businesses, which is something that's greatly affected by the ongoing recession. I need to talk a bit about sources here. Of course, we have an archive available of the main Western source for Joshi news at the time, that being the Wrestling Observer. But of course, being American, Big Man Meltzer's tentacles only reach so far into the locker rooms of Zenjo. Meltzer's primary source for news on AJW, and indeed a lot of pro-res goings-on, is Fumi Saito, Japanese wrestling journalist and historian. Who's Saito's source? Rossi Agawa, AJW's head of public relations and a longtime friend of Saito. So of course a lot of news that Meltzer's getting is going to be the good news, what Agawa, and by extension what Zenjo, wants him to hear. By the time that Meltzer does seriously start reporting on the major issues in Zenjo and just how bad business is going, it's 1997, and if Meltzer's reporting on that, it likely means Saito gave that to him, which means Rossi wanted him to get it, whether he just found about it or whether he thought it was a good time to say it, which means that everything is fucking terrible and utterly on fire. All that's to come. Nowadays we do have some more detailed insights into the state of things, even if it requires digging and translations. Interviews done with and books written by the stars themselves, and a big chunk of those interviews happen to be conducted by a Joshi legend. Bull Nakano's YouTube channel is one of Joshi's biggest. It largely centres around Bull interviewing her contemporaries and plenty other Joshi stars past and present, and here, thanks to people like Moscow Disco and others who've translated a bunch of them, we found a lot more information when it comes to the state of things, and honestly just how screwed it all was. Which kind of leads us to another thing that's happening, that being more wrestlers breaking off to form their own promotions. As far as money goes, we generally know that the pay for wrestlers was pretty poor. It wasn't exactly brilliant even if you were a senior. The cruel truth is that because the standard of wrestling is so amazing in Zenjo, we venerate the promotion so much. These wrestlers are giving it their absolute all, pushing their bodies to the limit, and we hope that they're getting reimbursed accordingly, certainly that they're being treated a lot better than women's wrestling was treated in the West at the time. After all, clearly it's such a successful promotion, right? And the truth in a lot of cases is that they weren't getting properly paid. The management at Zenjo did take quite a bit more than their fair share. Anyway, poor pay is a big reason why quite a few stars ended up doing photo books, Takako Inoue being the first Zenjo wrestler to do a photo book that was so revealing. While it was initially a controversial topic inside the AJW locker room, with some seniors being dead against it, people stopped giving Takako grief over it when she got paid around 10 million yen for her first book, split 50-50 with The Office, and soon enough others were doing them, including some who'd previously spoke against it. All this comes from her interview with Bull. Takako is but one example of someone doing this while still putting in all the work and being a great wrestler, but as far as the wrestling goes, well, the pay is shit in AJW. JWP and LLPW are considerably smaller, which obviously factors in even if they may be better in other regards. FMW has a women's division but is also starting to have its own major problems. That's a subject for another day, one that Wrestling Colin has covered recently. And so, in the mid-90s, what do some wrestlers start to do about it? Well, they go it alone and form promotions themselves. Gradually, the landscape of Joshi starts to change, just as it did in the late 80s when Zenjo went through a rough patch with JWP and later LLPW forming. Chigusa Nagayo is the outlier here. Her relationship with management had been a little fractious since her initial retirement, mainly because Chigusa triggered it herself due to not wanting to become a stepping stone for others. In 1995, she decided to follow down the path that LLPW went on, to build a promotion in which the wrestlers are in charge. Chigusa fell out with the Matsunagas for the final time when she founded Gaia Japan, basically told by them that she wasn't going to amount to jack shit as a rival. It's worth noting that Gaia's own subtle shot to AJW, one of many, something that stung more as Gaia became bigger over the decade, was calling their main belts the All Asia Athlete Women's Championships, meaning AAAW or Free AW. Similar but different from the Free WA, with an idea that the talent might actually be paid more for their blood, sweat and tears. Chigusa was the first star to break off from the Zenjo Empire in this way since the late 80s formation of the original JWP, and she will not be the last. Before 1996 is out, she'll cause quite a shock when she announces the arrival of one Akira Hokuto into Gaia. It's not quite Hogan to WCW, but it's certainly a shocking switch. Hokuto was technically a freelancer since around 94 or so, but her arrival in Gaia amounts to her crossing the floor. Speaking of WCW, Gaia getting Hokuto comes with another bonus. WCW were working with Hokuto, and seeing as they were interested in running a women's division primarily featuring her and Medusa, her signing means that they soon start a working relationship with Gaia and drop their one with Zenjo. Also, by the end of '96, Jaguar Yokota, Lioness Asuka and Bison Kimura will have teamed up to form JD Star, all three frustrated by the current state of play in Zenjo. Indeed, I have seen a quote from a later interview with Jaguar, who has her own YouTube channel, one which often features plenty of hype for matches she's doing in Diana, seeing as she's 64 and still motoring along at a pretty freaking speedy and high level, saying that when she returned to AJW in 1994, she saw that the finances were pretty bad, and that some of the lower card wrestlers actually weren't getting paid at all, endlessly fobbed off with promises that the payslips would be coming soon, having to split takes amongst themselves. In 1994? Apparently, yes. Even though 1994 was seemingly the peak of the whole 90s Joshi boom period, the year where they ran the frickin' Tokyo Dome for Christ's sake. Things are not always as they seem, and things may well be a lot more screwed up with the Matsunaga finances than people realise. And so, Manami Toyota settles into the role of being the top ace. Her first defence this time is a successful one, as she overcomes Yumiko Hotta on the 22nd January 1996 in a match that isn't quite as good as their Grand Prix final battle, but is still definitely worthy of a watch. Does Toyota being on top have an effect on the gradual slide of AJW? Well, no. Although I would argue that as far as the wrestling side of things goes, Zenjo's business would be starting to decline regardless of whoever's holding the belt. The problems that Zenjo faced as a promotion, after all, are similar to that faced by most other pro-res companies in the second half of the 90s, in the face of a hefty recession. Really, most of the late 90s sees only one pro-res company really make any money, and that's New Japan. For others, times become a bit tougher, although as we'll see in the last part, Zenjo's problems run a lot deeper than simply attracting less crowds. That's to come. For now, Manami Toyota's role as ace gets split between defending the red belt, but also doing a lot of big tag bouts, and indeed quite a lot of them are against Kyoko Inoue, so we'll be covering those in the fourth part. For now, we jump all the way to 6th of October 1996. It's the Zenjo Brightest Tour. We're at the Aichi Prefectural Gymnasium in Nagoya for a pretty successful show in front of 6,100 people, and Manami Toyota's defending the red belt against a very familiar rival. It feels like we haven't mentioned Aja Kong an awful lot lately, but she is still one of the biggest names in Zenjo, something she proves further by winning 1996's Grand Prix, defeating Kyoko Inoue in the final and winning the tournament for the second time. As we've already seen, winning the Grand Prix basically puts you first in line for a red belt shot, and so we're going to see Aja Kong and Manami Toyota taking each other on once again. And well, do you really need to hear an awful lot more than that? When Kong first won the Grand Prix in 1992, it set her on a path that ultimately led to victory over Bull Nakano and becoming Zenjo's undisputed top ace. Let's see now if history can repeat itself. Obviously, we're not messing about. Aja responds to Toyota's offer of a handshake with several slaps, and the fight is on. Toyota's springboard reply does get a bit ugly, but she still lands a kick and follows that with a missile drop kick. However, Aja's straight up with a lariat and another clothesline in the corner. Aja grounds Toyota and gets to work with a body scissors, although Toyota's not showing any pain. This match has no commentary, which is a bonus. We really get to hear a lot of the shit talking that this pair do to each other, especially when they're on the ground. Kong lands some kicks to the back, eventually working a sleeper, which Toyota tries to get out of by twisting Aja's ears. You don't see that often and I like it. Aja responds with a headbutt and Liz starts a headbutt fight. A bold move indeed, but a fight that Kong wins. Kong now works a camel clutch, throwing even more headbutts in the process, while Toyota loudly tells the ref to... well, I can't speak Japanese, but it certainly sounds like foul language. Needless to say, she's not giving up. Kong continues to goad Toyota as the stretch continues, following it up with a surfboard and more kicks, but a whip sees Toyota successfully use the Manami roll this time. However, Kong uses the position to apply another stretch, a neat variation on a Boston Crab that's kind of like a gorilla clutch, and from here she does a neck-hanging tree, putting all the weight on and forcing a bridge out from Toyota, which Kong counters by simply sitting on her. Sometimes you just gotta use the weight advantage. We get the slingshot backbreaker and slingshot guillotine, Aja lording it as ever, and from here we go to the outside. Aja takes Toyota around the audience to chuck her into some chairs. Aja sets up a table and probably gets slightly irked when Toyota spits frickin' water at her, ramming her right in there, and she does a shot with her favoured bin off the apron, which Toyota no-sells, whacking her with the bin right back. There's more headbutts, a run into the ring post, both wrestlers hyping up by whacking their own heads into the posts, and finally Kong does get the advantage with a pile driver onto the floor. Pretty awesome sequence, it must be said. Back in the ring now, and Kong has the centre, waiting for Toyota to return. Toyota's defiance comes in the form of taking the piss. Kong reaches up for a test of strength, but Toyota shows that she can reach higher than Aja. After all, she's taller. Kong does not like this insult, and a slap fight ensues. Kong comes out on top, and the crowd are loving all of this. Toyota reverses a whip with a dropkick, following that with two missile dropkicks, the second to the back of the head. The champ's getting back in there with an octopus hold, and Kong has to get to the ropes. From here, Toyota tries a body attack, but Kong catches, slams, and hits that big old stalling pile driver. Toyota is unsuccessful with a sunset flip, but moves out of the way of the falling Kong. A dropkick from there sends Aja out, but the challenger moves away from the no-hands plunger. Aja quickly gets Toyota back in, looking for a top rope splash. However, Toyota is able to intercept, eventually hitting another big dropkick to send Aja out once more, following that by getting the table out, ensuring Aja stays there with some mounted slaps. Toyota does an utterly nasty, ridiculous spot. A no-hand somersault plancher to a table-prone Aja that most certainly connects, but with where she lands and the table obviously not breaking, she lands so freaking hard on the concrete floor. Jesus Christ. Ill-advised, to say the least. And yet she's up so quickly despite that. That is one thing about Toyota, after all. Her resistance to pain and injury, as we have seen, is the stuff of legend, on the Spike Dudley level. Lord only knows how she did all these things and didn't actually spend half her time laid up on the shelf. Perhaps we don't want to know. We're back in, and Toyota tries for a German suplex. Kong gets the ropes and reverses an Irish whip, and this time she counters a Manami roll with a sit-out powerbomb, things continuing to be totally even between these two greats. Aja looks for the big backdrop, but Toyota flips out and hits the German this time for a near fall. However, Kong gets the knees up on a moonsault attempt and hits the backdrop. She now hits the big splash off of Brett's rope, but Toyota does the big old fuck you bridge out, and when Kong tries to go up again for the back elbow, Toyota intercepts and ends up hitting a big sunset bomb for a near fall. Toyota looks for the Cyclone, getting battered away and one into the ropes, Aja countering with a huge scoop piledriver, forever just doing amazing monster shit basically, and speaking of which, she follows that up with a massive super water wheel drop. Toyota bridges out again, but a move like this one is often the prelude to a finish. Aja looks for a big brainbuster, Toyota escaping again. However, when she tries for a roll-up, Kong blocks and hits a whopper of an elevated German. Again, Kong looks for that back elbow, and suddenly Toyota's up again, grabbing those arms, getting her on the shoulders, hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, but it's not enough. Toyota's finished Kong this way before, but not this time. Both are slow to get up, having taken each other to the limit once again, and out of nowhere Kong bursts out the Hurricane. However, the effort sends her down, unable to capitalise. She finally manages to crawl over and cover, but once again, that big bridge out. As Aja gets up, Toyota gets her own burst of energy, hitting a big release German. However, these bombs simply cannot be capitalised on, and eventually Aja is up again, ready in the glove, pumping the fist, looking to get that belt back. Say goodnight, princess. She goes for the Hurricane, but Toyota blocks, wraps her up, hits the Japanese Ocean suplex, and gets the free count. In 21 minutes 07, Manami Toyota successfully defends the red belt against her greatest rival, once again overcoming the almighty Aja Kong, as the Nagoya crowd goes wild, thoroughly appreciative of this huge main event. Not always the sort of thing you would see outside of Tokyo, but it's been a pretty damn good night. This 1996 clash isn't the best known of Kong and Toyota's matches, but if you haven't seen it, then holy hell you really ought to. This match is just so much frickin' fun. I mean, it's no shock at all that it's great considering that this is a perfect partnership, but they just throw it all out there. They know each other so well, there's even the odd laugh amongst all the hate, the shit talking and occasional piss taking, but this is a glorious 20-minute slugfest. The ending was a damn good one too. The pair just didn't let up on each other with massive bombs throughout, let alone simply in the finishing stretch, and you got to a stage where clearly the next big move was very likely to finish the match, no matter what it was. Ultimately, that big move belonged to Toyota, and she defended the belt. She did so like a champion in many ways, showing a streak that's not necessarily associated with her, being utterly mean at points while still being the typical reckless angel we all know and love. It's something important to highlight because Toyota always seems like the perfect face character, the flying angel and all of that, but she most certainly does have an attitude, the good old Southern Japan roughneck streak that comes out in all the trash talk. It's a great match, and it adds even more to this legendary pairing. Toyota and Kong were already one of the greatest pairings in wrestling history, and they've only gone and done it again. Okay, now it's time to bring it all together. With Manami Toyota sitting pretty as the champ, it's time to get back onto Kyoko Inoue's road, especially seeing as in 1996, the two are going to mostly be facing each other, with Kyoko hot on Toyota's heels, looking to become the top ace of Zenjo. Part 4 is going to be all about Kyoko Inoue taking on Manami Toyota, but ultimately it's going to be about something else. Because yes, Zenjo's business is going to come to a head, and we will ultimately have to look at their fall from grace. That is the backdrop for this whole series after all. The action may be great, but it's the last period where AJW really had a place in the spotlight, and in 1997 it's all going to come crashing down. All that's to come in part 4, but hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and until the next time, bye for now. It's time for the 4th and final part of our big AJW series, and we're going back to Kyoko Inoue. Mainly we're looking at her major battles in 1996 against Manami Toyota, both in singles and tag competition, as she goes for the red belt, although we'll be starting with Kyoko going up against someone else we've looked at quite a bit in this series. Kyoko, just like damn near everyone here, was one of the very best wrestlers in the world in the mid-90s, so naturally the standard of action is going to be ludicrously high. Still, there's something else we have to cover in this last part, that being how everything completely fell apart for Zenjo in 1997. If you're ready to fight, then get yourself settled in, as we're about to go. We left Kyoko Inoue at the Destiny show on 2nd of September, where she finally managed to score a big victory against her mentor and friend, Bull Nakano. Not quite as big a passing of the torch moment as the main event Akira Hokuto vs Manami Toyota match, but not far off. Zenjo's last big show of the year, Monday Night Sensation at the Sumo Hall on 4th of December, we'll see Kyoko Inoue in the semi-main event once again, this time against an opponent who she actually hasn't faced a whole lot in singles up to this point, Aja Kong. Kyoko and Aja have had a couple of singles matches, but generally these two have been about tag competition, and indeed a part of that includes teaming with each other. After all, both were part of Bull's Gokumonto, or Prison Gang stable, and together Kyoko Inoue and Aja Kong won the 1992 Tag League. So the rivalry between Kyoko and Kong isn't necessarily as heated as the one that Kon and Toyota have. There's a lot of respect going into this one, although Kyoko's obviously looking for another big victory, seeing as she's never beaten Kong in singles competition. There is something else we should also go into quickly, of course, something that happened in between Destiny and Monday Night Sensation, that being the trip that both Kyoko and Aja took over to the States to wrestle in the WWF, mainly at 1995 Survivor Series in an 8-woman tag that also saw Lioness Asuka, Saki Hasegawa, Tomoko Watanabe and Chapurita Asari come over to team with Alundra Blaze and Bertha Faye. As usual, there's not much rest for the Zenjo troupe. All of these wrestlers took part in the big 18th November AJW Wrestle Marine Pad show in Yokohama, before quite literally getting straight on a plane to the States to wrestle at Survivor Series in Maryland on the 19th. While the Joshi stars are understandably jet-lagged, the match is kind of short and the commentary is awful. Thanks Mr. Perfect, they still put on a pretty good showing, with Aja Kong set for a feud over the women's title with Blaze being the sole survivor and Kyoko being the second to last eliminated for Blaze's team. Kyoko also did wrestle at the next night's Raw taping, teaming with Blaze for a loss against the team of Kong and Watanabe, while Aja stayed one further night to tape her rather legendary squash of Asari, where she broke her nose with the Uraken. Alas, by the time that this match airs, Alundra Blaze has gone from WWF and is about to throw the women's title in the trash on Nitro, so the relationship between WWF and AJW was short-lived. By all accounts, there was nothing but major respect and friendship between both of these rather battle-hardened crews. With all that gone through, let's go back to Japan, to the fabled Sumo Hall, and to this big clash. We've had a close-up of the bell being struck, the MC is elongating his introductions as usual, the streamers are being cleared, and the stage of battle is set. After a little hesitancy, this match starts with a handshake before the pair get going with kicks and chops. Kong wins the first battle and hits a big running knee, but Kyoko counters an Irish whip with the springboard elbow. Still, Kong reverses a whip herself and hits a corner clothesline. Another counter, this time from Kyoko, and she hits the vaulting DDT, but Aja beats Kyoko to the punch on another whip, hitting a Vader attack. Pretty clear from the off just how even this match is going to be, I'd say. Aja hits a jumping elbow and works a chin lock, Kyoko finds the ropes but soon gets knocked down by chops from Aja, and again, the whips aren't working. This time Kyoko counters with the springboard dropkick, and from here she tries to get Aja up in the surfboard. She doesn't quite manage it, but instead she works a camel clutch. It's a struggle for Kong, but she eventually gets up and falls back to break the hold. This only offers a brief respite as Kyoko's able to lock in again, this time pretty deep. Aja seems to fade a little, but eventually breaks it with a chin crusher, finding the ropes when Kyoko tries a third time. Kyoko hits a DDT and tries for a lariat, but Aja reverses with an atomic drop variation, followed by blasting Kyoko with slaps and a big palm strike off a whip. Aja poses a bit as the action spills outside, Kyoko getting rammed into a table and some seats, before Aja actually does one of Kyoko's favourites, a big run through the sumo hall audience for a clothesline. Back in now, and Aja hits a Hanin vertical suplex, followed by the stalling pile driver, finally now taking control in the way that's led her to so much success in the past. Aja's now trying to put Kyoko to sleep, making her fade enough in the end to score a near fall out of it, and a slam is followed by the big splash off Brett's rope for another one. Aja applies the sleeper again, but this time Kyoko's a bit closer to the ropes, and ultimately she's able to find them. Not that this stops Aja from landing some nasty kicks to the back, with a particularly nasty one thrown in response to a springboard elbow attempt. While Aja is very much in control, Kyoko gets a little respite by shifting her weight on a backdrop, trying for a surprise fall. However, Aja blocks a missile dropkick. From there, Aja goes up top herself, and while Kyoko tries to do the run-up suplex, she gets pushed away and Kong hits a huge missile dropkick of her own. It's always something when the daughter of King Kong goes aerial. Kyoko does finally manage a reply when Aja goes for it again. She does get pushed away initially, but she is able to hit the run-up head scissors, landing it more like a kick, slightly ugly, but enough to take Kong down. Kyoko tries to counter another whip by running up the corner, but gets pushed to the floor, and Kong goes aerial again with a massive tope. Not something often seen, but it's magnificent. Kong remains in control and now looks to close it out, readying up the glove, picking Kyoko up, doing the little slaps. However, the Uraken and a lariat are dodged. Kyoko's still got fight, but she gets hit with a power slam for a near fall. Kyoko gets positioned up top, Aja looking for the big water wheel drop, but we get another telling counter. Kyoko catches Aja out and hits a sunset bomb, and she's finally right back in the match as we get to the 15-minute mark. Kyoko looks for the Niagara driver, but can't quite get Aja up, and instead hits a couple of lariats. With Kong sufficiently weakened, Kyoko goes for it again. This time she does hit the Niagara driver, however Kong kicks out. Not to be denied, Kyoko goes straight for it again and does manage to hit a second Niagara driver, but still Kong will not be beaten. Kyoko must think that surely it's going to be third time lucky. However, this time Kong's able to get off her shoulders and the Uraken echoes around the sumo hall. Kong has had so much taken out of her low, she cannot take advantage of her big shot, and it takes time for both wrestlers to get to their feet. In the end, Kyoko is there first, hitting another big lariat for a near fall, and again trying for Niagara. This time Kong reverses, and while Kyoko dodges an Uraken, Aja dodges a clothesline and makes a last stand, hitting 3 huge backdrop drivers, one after the other. Kyoko just kicks out, and Aja knows that she has to finish this now. She takes Kyoko up top and hits the big water wheel drop, but once again Kyoko survives. Aja goes up top for the big back elbow, but Kyoko gets her own surge, German suplexing Aja from the top with a big show of strength for a near fall. Again she tries for a regular one, Kong clinging on for dear life with elbows, but when Aja desperately tries another Uraken, Kyoko blocks it, hits the German, and while that doesn't get it, she quickly picks Kong up, hits the third Niagara driver, and with that she gets the win. Kyoko Inoue gets her big singles victory over Aja Kong in 19 minutes 56, and once the pair have recovered, there's a bit of a show of respect, Kong getting on the mic to congratulate Kyoko on her victory. Once again, this is a match where in the main, you simply have to be in awe of Aja Kong. Kyoko is as usual pretty freaking great here. All that energy, the power, the sheer athleticism. There's certainly some wild moments in here where Kyoko shows what she can do, and she really does a great job of getting chucked around. Still, it's Kong who builds another masterwork, a picture-perfect, dominant monster who ever so gradually gets whittled down, getting ever more slower, eventually becoming desperate, and finally losing. The selling, the details of it, the way Kong builds it all up, and everything just happens at the right time, from the frustrated glares to the explosion of backdrops, the absolute brilliance of that Hail Mary Uraken and how she collapsed from the damage and the effort. She is something else. If you had to pick the best wrestler overall in Zenjo, then of course you have the wrestlers who had particularly amazing years, Hokuto, Toyota, and now Kyoko. But the consistent answer, the one who is simply always there at the top? It is still Aja, even if in many ways this is a passing of the baton. Not the torch, but this shows the direction that Zenjo is going to go in. In 1996, Kyoko Inoue is going to be the main contender for the red belt that, at the end of tonight, is going to be around the waist of Manami Toyota. And we should most definitely look forward to what they're going to do against each other. We do get a further indicator of the obvious direction that AJW are going to go in the match that we used as a bit of background for talking about the state of Zenjo's business in the third part, Manami Toyota's 30-match gauntlet against the rest of the company on Christmas Day 1995. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted that while Toyota faced most everybody twice over the 30 minutes, she actually faced Kyoko Inoue 3 times, back to back to back. The results of those 3 matches were quite symbolic too. Kyoko was Toyota's 20th opponent, and she was the first to actually pin her, using the Niagara Driver. In match 21, Kyoko went for the Niagara Driver again, however this time Toyota countered with a roll-up and managed to pin Kyoko in just 16 seconds. And from there the 22nd match was a frenzied draw, both hitting big shots like the top rope slam and a German suplex before the bell rang. It's not long before Kyoko gets the chance to take the red belt from Toyota. It's announced in February that Toyota and Kyoko are going to headline the year's big Wrestling Queendom show on March 31st at the Yokohama Arena in front of what's announced as 12,500 people. We have a fair bit of interpromotional action going on through the card. A Valet Chudo match involving Yumiko Hotta in the semi-main, one that she wins this time. Appearances from FMW stars Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota, and a bunch of younger talents in the first half of the show. Future notable talents like Azumi Hyuga, Yoshiko Tamura, Mise Genki, Yuki Miyazaki, Ran Yu Yu and The Bloody are all on here, while this card also features Saki Hasegawa's retirement match. The main event match itself is not exactly one that needs hyping up, especially not considering what these two did when they last fought for the title in May of 1995 and ended up going all the way to a 60-minute draw at Korakuen Hall. For all we know, there may not be a clear winner this time either. But in any case, the red belt's up for grabs, along with the honour of being the ace of Zenjo. As is often the case, we're not wasting any time. Toyota rushes Kyoko and goes for a dropkick, but Kyoko's ready. She dodges and immediately locks Toyota into a huge giant swing. However, once she's finished swinging Toyota around, the champ is quick to recover, locking in a pretty long rolling cradle in response. It's a hot start indeed, and things restart with a bit of a test of strength. Kyoko definitely has an advantage in this department, locking the arms and throwing Toyota, but Manami counters an Irish whip with a vaulting dropkick. For her part, Kyoko counters an Irish whip with the springboard elbow, and we get into stretching. Kyoko does her favoured surfboard, complete with some posing, following that up with a typically deep Boston Crab. Once Kyoko's finished, she looks to work Toyota's arm. The champ counters with a lucha arm drag off the ropes, but Kyoko remains on top, quickly cinching a camel clutch. Toyota slowly reverses a body scissors, applying a leg lock, getting more and more torque before she's able to get Kyoko down, wrap up the legs and, with a bit of her own posing, apply her inverted deathlock STF, following that with a bow and arrow. Toyota does enough damage with her stretching that once it's released, Kyoko needs to roll out of the ring in order to get away from it. Toyota quickly continues the assault once the challenger gets back in, but then she gets reversed on a whip to the corner, with Kyoko then hitting the vaulting DDT. Again though, the reversals come thick and fast, Toyota now responding with a springboard dropkick after getting whipped, following that with another missile dropkick. Toyota keeps control, slamming Kyoko, but this time her trip up top is interrupted by the run-up suplex, and while Toyota is able to push Kyoko to the floor when she tries for the run-up elbow, Kyoko gets the biggest reversal so far, dodging the no-hand somersault plancher, Toyota crashing and burning quite nastily on the floor. The fight continues outside, Kyoko clotheslining Toyota over the guardrail and the table before throwing her back in and looking for a missile dropkick. Toyota's eventually able to meet her on the top rope, and although Kyoko goes to reverse with her super slam, Toyota gets behind her, pushes her off, and hits the Inoue missile dropkick, pressing the advantage with 2 consecutive moonsaults for a near fall. She looks to surprise, going for the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex relatively early. However, Kyoko gets behind, hitting Toyota with a big release German suplex. The Niagara Driver attempt doesn't come off, but Kyoko is able to reverse the Manami roll attempt with a regular powerbomb for a near fall. And yet when Kyoko then goes for Niagara again, Manami does counter with the roll, again getting close to the win. After a brief pause, Toyota tries to go up top again, Kyoko countering this time with the run-up head scissors, followed by her own Inoue missile dropkick. At many stages in this bout, it just feels like watching 2 mirrors wrestling each other. They are both so alike in many ways, but Toyota's the one doing the big old bridge out. Kyoko looks for one of her strongest weapons, applying the Spider Nest STF. It gets the crowd going, Kyoko really locking it in deep at points, but eventually the champ's able to find the ropes. Toyota clings to the ropes to avoid a German, reversing an Irish whip. This time when Kyoko goes for the springboard, Toyota knocks her out of the ring, then executing the dropkick to the floor, followed by another one of Kyoko's favourite spots, going all the way up the entrance to deliver a clothesline. Toyota clearly enjoyed that, and goes for it again. However, this time she runs straight into a belly-to-belly, and Kyoko shows the champ just how it's done with a huge one, ending with a lariat. We're at a stage where both are close to victory, but Kyoko's got a shot right here, signalling for another whopping lariat. This time, Toyota reverses into the Japanese Ocean suplex, but Inoue's feet are on the ropes. Toyota then gets her up on her shoulders, not quite getting all of it, but still hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex, and it's only 2. Toyota looks for a more decisive cyclone, taking Kyoko up top to hit it. Kyoko gets out of there, and while she gets knocked back, she gets a boost and rips Toyota off the corner with a huge release German suplex. There's a bit of a recovery period, but Kyoko's soon up, hitting a big lariat to Toyota on the ropes. While Toyota dodges a second one, she gets caught on the rebound and turned inside out. Is this the big moment? After a near fall, Kyoko picks Toyota straight up, gets her on the shoulders, hits the Niagara Driver, and the champion survives. Naturally, Kyoko goes for it again. This time Toyota gets out, almost getting reversed into a German and getting put onto the ropes. However, when Kyoko goes for another springboard, Toyota hits a decisive strike, a huge running dropkick right to the back, poleaxing the challenger. Toyota quickly gets Kyoko up on the shoulders and hits a second cyclone. Once again the challenger's able to survive, but Toyota has something else up her sleeve. She wraps up Kyoko's arms, gets her up onto the shoulders, and brings her down in a vicious sit-out powerbomb. And that brand new move is enough for the 3 count. Manami Toyota defends the title, pinning Kyoko Inoue in 21 minutes 23 with the rarely seen Japanese Ocean Bomb, a different move to the Queen Bee Bomb. Again, there's a show of respect afterwards, a handshake and embrace, and also an understanding that it's unlikely to be too long before Kyoko Inoue is fighting for the title again. So I would say that this match, while not an all-time great, is a very good one. As I said in the recap, it does very much feel like a mirror match at times. Kyoko and Toyota are both bringing a similar intensity, they're both throwing bombs all the way, forever gutsing it out on each other's big moves, never waiting too long to reply with something else. I suppose that one trouble with it is that we have already seen this pair reach an utterly ludicrous high. What they did in May 95 at Korakuen Hall was simply something else, and they couldn't quite get there again. Still, it's damn good, especially with the occasional mimicking actions, and the general psychology does follow on quite well from the May 95 match. Back then, neither wrestler had a move in their arsenal that could defeat the other. The Cyclone and the Niagara Driver simply weren't enough. It stands to reason that one of these wrestlers would need some sort of new technique to get the job done, similar to what's often seen in the King's Road style that Zenjo is so similar to. And in the end, it was Toyota who was able to use a new technique, although the crowd do seem a bit underwhelmed by it. Perhaps that's why this one isn't a common finisher for Toyota. I may have expected to see the Queen Bee Bomb, the Northern Lights bomb Toyota earned from defeating Hokuto, as the finish here. But hey ho. It is still damn fine wrestling, not the best match we've ever seen from this pair, but a great way to spend 20 or so minutes. For our next bout, we go over to tag competition and the continued success of Kyoko and Takako, the double Inoues. In the second part, we saw them defeat Manami Toyota and Saki Hasegawa in a classic, the match where Kyoko got that first big pin on Toyota. In the time since, they've both lost and won the 3WA tag belts. In September of '95, they dropped them to the LCO team of Mima Shimoda and Akira Hokuto, the Dangerous Queen getting her mojo back after the big loss to Toyota at Destiny. However, in January of '96, the double Inoues reclaimed the belts in another classic match, one that certainly warrants a strong mention. As with all tag title bouts in AJW, it's 2 out of 3 falls, and while Hokuto was able to pin Inoue to score the first fall, Kyoko Inoue would take her revenge this time out. She pinned Shimoda for the equaliser, and then, at just under the half-hour mark, she pinned Hokuto to win the decisive fall following the combination Niagara Driver and Chokeslam. So now Kyoko Inoue has her own big victory against the Dangerous Queen, and the double Inoues become 3-time 3WA tag champs. It's most certainly another match from this period that's worth checking out amongst, well, all the others. For the next big match we're covering, we go to Champions Night in Sapporo on 22nd of June, where the Inoues defend against a team that hadn't wrestled together for about 18 months, seemingly going their separate ways. But now they're back. The Tokyo Sweethearts. Mima Shimoda and Manami Toyota originally teamed back in their junior days, and while the team continued until around 95 or so, Shimoda's allegiances were with LCO, and then Toyota had her own stable, that being Freedom Force with Saki Hasegawa. Now they're back, and they're looking to do something they never quite managed the first time around, winning the top tag titles. And of course it's another chapter in the rivalry between the singles champ and her top challenger, so there's going to be plenty to break down. Takako and Shimoda get things started, kicking away at each other and doing some ring rope clotheslines, what you would expect from the two rougher members of the team. Takako does a reversal into a neat side suplex, but Shimoda dodges both Inoues on a whip, and Toyota hits a missile dropkick on the champs. Unfortunately, when Toyota goes for the big plunger, she falters and ends up hitting her partner. Takako is quick to isolate Shimoda, taking her for a trip to the cheap seats and choking her with a chair, before getting her back in the ring where Kyoko greets her with double chops. Shimoda's able to reply with a neckbreaker drop, and while Kyoko tries to do the one up the post, Shimoda pushes her off and hits a sweet flying head scissors for a near fall. Toyota gets in and tries for the missile dropkick, but Kyoko catches her and does the giant swing, the crowd counting along, and Takako comes in for a quick side suplex attempt, followed by a jumping DDT. The Inoues look for another double team, throwing Toyota to the ropes. However, she comes back off with a springboard sunset flip, and as Shimoda holds Kyoko, Manami Toyota gets a surprise 3 count on Takako Inoue. The first falls over just like that, in a mere 3 minutes 31, and suddenly the champions are behind thanks to a combination of both Toyota's exceptional speed and ability, and Shimoda's knack of being in the right place at the right time. Takako's quick to hit Toyota hard at the start of the second fall with a butterfly suplex, nasty running kicks and a DDT, and from here she grounds Toyota, starting with a sleeper. Kyoko comes in and the pair hit a double DDT, Kyoko following up with a torture rack throw and torture rack backbreaker, before she does her favourite surfboard complete with dancing and Takako sneaking in a few kicks. Takako comes in and repeatedly cinches in a Boston Crab before cross-facing Toyota, again making sure to get a few claws and pulls in. The champ is very much the face in peril at this point. Toyota finds the ropes again, but the punishment continues, both Inoues landing hammer blows on her. However, she finds a way out with a Manami roll, making the tag to Shimoda. Mima quickly gets rough with a hair takedown and some chokes with the foot, but she's unable to execute a piledriver. While she kicks away at Kyoko, she responds with a snap fisherman suplex for 2. Takako comes in, but Shimoda's still very much at it, countering a whip with a springboard body attack, followed by a piledriver to bring Toyota back. She quickly reverses a clothesline and applies the rolling cradle, looking for a moonsault afterwards, but getting slammed off. Takako takes control once more with a backdrop hold for 2, but Toyota ducks the Takako panic knee, the heel Inoue instead jumping into a Shimoda dropkick. However, Takako gets her knees up on a Toyota moonsault. Takako hits a big backdrop, but Toyota does the bridge out, in trouble but still defiant. Takako connects with Takako Panic straight after, and Toyota's only saved by Shimoda just wriggling out of Kyoko's clutches to break up the pin. Shimoda's still saving her when the Inoues try for the Niagara chokeslam, but while Toyota tries to get Takako up top, she gets nailed by a super chokeslam. Toyota still survives, now wriggling out of Kyoko's Niagara driver, but a Manami roll attempt results in a powerbomb. Toyota still manages to get a roll-up from another Niagara attempt for a near fall. She goes up top now for the missile dropkick, but Kyoko's ready and runs up for the big suplex, proceeding from there to nail Toyota with 2 vicious lariats on the ropes. Toyota manages to dodge a third, but as she runs back in, Kyoko takes her head off on the rebound, and as Takako holds off Shimoda, this is enough for Kyoko to pin Toyota and score the equaliser. The second fall's finished in 15 minutes 01, and the scores are level. Toyota spent a long time behind in this fall, and while Shimoda did try to stop the Inoues, she wasn't able to in the end. They took control right from the start of this fall, and basically didn't let up until they won it. We go to the third fall with Toyota very much still recovering, but Kyoko can't help but be a face, encouraging Toyota to get back to her best. When they do clash, Kyoko quickly overpowers her with a double wristlock takedown, grounding her and applying a half crab, followed by both Inoues taking turns on a camel clutch. Takako's is naturally rougher. Finally, Toyota is able to get out with a springboard dropkick in the corner, bringing Shimoda in. She flies out with a very cool chokeslam type move, impact chokeslam, hitting some running stomps and applying a figure 4 leg lock to Takako, which looks particularly nasty considering Mima has legs that would shame Xenia on a top. Toyota hits a top rope splash while Shimoda holds on to the figure 4, and while Takako does eventually reach the ropes, Shimoda keeps control with a tree of woe and more stomps, and makes sure to stop any hope of Kyoko tagging in by taking her out when Takako tries a desperate roll-up. Shimoda applies a Boston Crab, giving Toyota a chance to hit a running dropkick, and she continues her focus from there on Takako's legs. Kyoko comes back in to get some revenge for the knock off the apron, but the challengers are still in control, Shimoda now simply stepping on Takako's head, just so that she can hear better. The punishment finally stops when Takako reverses a whip and gets out of the way of a springboard body attack, hitting some grounded slaps and some punches in the corner, also making sure to remind the audience that they're number 1. Awesome, isn't she? Takako hits a DDT and a few more stomps, bringing Kyoko back in after a quite stiff slap. While Shimoda tries to continue fighting her, Kyoko hits a nasty release German suplex, following that with a whip to the corner and the vaulting DDT. Kyoko locks in a nasty surfboard stretch, bringing Takako back after she's finished. Shimoda counters a side suplex with a roll-up, but takes a nasty chokeslam off the top when she tries to go up. Shimoda finally manages to hit a double neckbreaker drop on the Inoues, and Toyota comes in for some chaos, holding the champs on the outside while Shimoda hits a tope. Toyota then goes in herself, and while she doesn't immediately hit it, she eventually does the no-hand somersault plunger, and the Sweethearts are back in the match. Shimoda hits a missile dropkick on Kyoko for a near fall, but the Sweethearts miss a double splash. However, Shimoda is able to intercept Kyoko up top to hit a super butterfly suplex. Kyoko escapes a tiger suplex and catches Shimoda off the ropes with a chokeslam, but Toyota makes a crucial interference when Kyoko tries the run-up elbow. She catches her, holds off Takako, and Shimoda hits the Death Lake driver. However, Kyoko is just able to get her shoulder up. With Kyoko in heaps of trouble, a Tiger Suplex pin is just about interrupted by Takako, and Toyota is now officially back in. Takako thwarts a Cyclone attempt with a backdrop, and the pair try for the Niagara Chokeslam, interrupted by Shimoda. However, Kyoko does catch Toyota up top, hitting the huge Super Slam. It's a near fall after the big bridge out, and Toyota is soon able to reverse an Irish whip into the Japanese Ocean Suplex for a near fall of her own. Takako runs interference, attacking off the top with the knee, Kyoko then hitting a clothesline and trying for Niagara. She hits it, but Toyota just kicks out. The double Inoues try to finish it, and this time they hit the huge Niagara Chokeslam, and this time Shimoda is just about able to break up the pin, despite Takako's best efforts. They look for the move again. This time Shimoda interrupts with a neckbreaker drop to Kyoko, while Takako gets shoved to the floor. And now, with Toyota back in the ascendancy, she hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex, but Kyoko kicks out once more. The Sweethearts set themselves up, and we get a huge assisted Cyclone, Shimoda spiking Kyoko down, and Takako somehow just managing to break this up. With this, Shimoda takes Takako to the outside, leaving Toyota to finish this off. Manami hits the Japanese Ocean Bomb, and this time Kyoko just about manages to survive it. However, there is nothing left. Toyota gets her on the ropes, puts her on the shoulders, hits the Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex, and with Takako nowhere to be found, the match is over. The Tokyo Sweethearts win the 3WA Tag Team titles in 32 minutes 33 by 2 falls to 1. Another pretty damn good tag match here, one where I would say that generally the spotlight really belongs to Mima Shimoda. She shines a hell of a lot in this bout, especially in the third fall. The most crucial part of the whole thing may be the beating she initially takes in the decider, but the way she then powers back not just to get back into the match, but to give the Sweethearts a crucial advantage was something else. It is a different dynamic perhaps, one you may not expect, but an understanding that while Toyota may be the red belt champ, tag wrestling is where Shimoda really shines, and in many ways she is the aggressor of the team, telling the main story while Toyota is, quite often, the face in peril. Of course, it's all great stuff. Takako Inoue similarly is never not awesome, and we get some absolutely vicious exchanges between her and Mima, and all the while we have the continuation of the overarching story between Kyoko and Toyota. Another beat where, once again, Manami Toyota gets the better of the would-be ace. At this point, some things have to change for Kyoko Inoue, and there is one thing that does change after this bout. The double Inoues don't try to get those belts back. They will still team up and they will still wrestle together, but if Kyoko is going to overcome Manami Toyota and eventually get that red belt, she has to focus on that entirely. It's the only way that she will become the ace of Zenjo. As mentioned in the previous part, Kyoko Inoue got all the way to the final of 1996's Japan Grand Prix. However, she ended up losing that final to Aja Kong, who unsuccessfully challenged for Toyota's title on the 6th of October. On the same night, Kyoko faced Yumiko Hotta in a number 1 contenders match, and while Hotta was able to dish out the usual leg-based punishment, Kyoko came through the bout, guaranteed to face the winner of the Kong-Toyota match. And so, on December the 8th, a little over a year after Manami Toyota won the red belt from Dynamite Kansai, Kyoko Inoue is going to get another opportunity. It'll be at the same venue that Toyota won the title. The Real Earnest marks Zenjo's second trip to Sumo Hall, and it's a success with a legitimate sellout of 10,500, a semi-main dream tag partnership of Aja Kong and Dynamite Kansai defeating Takako Inoue and Moriko Yoshida, Momo Nakanishi winning the 1996 Rookie of the Year, the also mentioned in the last part defeat of Yumiko Hotta in her Vale Tudo rematch against Rosina Elenia, and several other solid turns on the card. As for the main event, well, if Kyoko Inoue is ever going to be the ace of Zenjo, surely it has to happen tonight. She's put everything she has on this one, but what remains to be seen is if she can pull out something we've not seen before in order to take down the Flying Angel and at last win the red belt. I should quickly pause here for a note on watching these bouts. Originally, the upload of this match I watched was from AJW's TV show, and it had about 8 minutes cut out of it. However, I found the whole match, and indeed the whole Real Earnest show, thanks to Roy Lucier. If you want to watch classic Joshi, Pro-Res, Lucha, territory stuff, all sorts, particularly full TV episodes and cards, Roy Lucier is your guy. His channels are the best, and there'll be a link. Anyway, in the words of Chef John, let's go ahead and get started. We don't get the normal speedy opening, the pair circling each other, but when they do go in for a test of strength, Toyota instead opts for a lucha arm drag, holding on and trying for a flying arm scissors that doesn't come off, getting stomped by Kyoko. Toyota counters a whip with a vaulting dropkick, but a whip of her own is countered by Kyoko's springboard elbow. We get another whip counter, this time Toyota hitting a springboard body attack, but then missing a missile dropkick. Kyoko grabs her and applies the giant swing, going into a half crab, and from here Kyoko does a torture rack backbreaker and torture rack throw. This torture rack trilogy is completed on the outside. Kyoko lifts Toyota into position and chucks her onto the table. Ouch. Back in now, and Kyoko continues the work with her favourite surfboard stretch, riding the waves as normal, doing even more surfboard stretching afterwards. However, once that's done, Toyota does manage a comeback with the springboard dropkick, followed by another missile dropkick to take it outside again. As always, turnabout is fair play. Toyota gets revenge for that earlier table spot by side-slamming Kyoko onto the wood. We're back in and working ground again. Kyoko takes down Manami, who goes into full guard, but Kyoko powers through with slaps and a slam. However, Toyota counters an Irish whip and greets Kyoko with the old 5 fingers across the face on her return. Toyota puts Kyoko in the corner for a couple of big running drop kicks, and from there Kyoko's struggling and managing to find the ropes, evading a German suplex. However, she reverses an Irish whip herself, hitting the vaulting DDT in the corner. Kyoko applies a half crab, perhaps using it for a bit of recovery more than anything, wiping the mostly gone by now face paint out of her eyes, and when Kyoko's finished there she runs Toyota in and hits a belly to belly, followed by a snap DDT before working a camel clutch. Stretching that further with a body scissors. Toyota finds the ropes, and when Kyoko goes for a suplex, Toyota gets behind and applies the rolling cradle for a near fall. Toyota tries for a moonsault, but gets caught with a German suplex off the top. But when Kyoko tries to go up top, she gets booted to the floor. It looks like Toyota's going big off the top, but Kyoko's able to catch her and slam her down to the floor, the champ landing pretty damn hard, and Kyoko follows that by whipping Toyota into the guardrail and clotheslining her over it, the crowd bubbling up pretty nicely by this point. Back in the ring, and Kyoko Irish whips Toyota. However, we get a successful Manami roll for a near fall and another moonsault attempt. This time Kyoko gets the knees up. Kyoko tries for a lariat but gets body chopped over the top, and Toyota does a messy yet effective no-hands plunger. She's not done there. She pulls a table out, positions Kyoko on it, and while she doesn't get it the first time, she hits a no-hand somersault plunger on the prone Kyoko. This one goes better than the one against Kong. Toyota doesn't land on her frickin' head, and the table certainly bends a fair bit. Still an absolutely wild spot, but what do you expect? She is, after all, the Frank Lloyd Wright of Dangerous Aerial Flight. We're back in with Toyota trying for Japanese Ocean, Kyoko finding the ropes. However, Toyota counters the whip counter, hitting the Japanese Ocean suplex for another 2 count. Again, the champ looks for an aerial assault, but this time Kyoko perks up, runs up, and hits the flying head scissors. And yet the parity is amazing. Kyoko's run-up back elbow is also intercepted by Toyota, who hits a huge sunset bomb. More big near falls, but Toyota now looks to finish, getting Kyoko up, hitting the Japanese Ocean Cyclone, but it's only 2. She goes for it again, but Kyoko's able to get off the shoulders and turn Toyota inside out with the lariat. While Kyoko then misses a clothesline from the ropes, she's able to turn another Manami roll into a powerbomb for a near fall, and from there she gets Toyota up, hits the Niagara driver, and again it's a 2 count. Kyoko's fully pumped, but the next Niagara driver attempt is countered by a roll for another close call, and Toyota looks to go up top. Again though, Kyoko intercepts with the run-up arm drag, seemingly having all the answers for the champ at this point in the bout. We end up with another big fight up top. Both of these wrestlers are so fast that it's kind of hard to get any kind of aerial move off. Toyota looks to have the advantage until Kyoko locks in, getting her up for the super slam. However, Toyota hits a telling blow, countering that slam with an absolutely wild victory roll from the top. It's a big count, but the bottom rope saves Kyoko. Toyota's at it again, looking for the cyclone. However, Kyoko gets out, one clothesline sends Toyota to the ropes, Kyoko hits two more huge ones with Toyota on the ropes, but gets caught on a third with Toyota hitting a German suplex for another very close fall. Still Kyoko's defiant, roaring at Toyota, goading her. The champ hits another German suplex, the challenger still shouting, followed by another, and in the end, the challenger is still here. Toyota tries to whip Kyoko, but the challenger's faster than expected, catching Manami with a huge lariat and turning her inside out again, Billy Gunn or Rikishi style. Again Kyoko's going for it. She gets Toyota up and hits a second Niagara driver, but the champ still kicks out. Indeed, she still has fight, attacking on the get-up and trying for the Japanese Ocean Bomb. Kyoko escapes, but gets caught again and hit with a second Japanese Ocean Cyclone suplex. And that's not the match. Kyoko kicked out. Toyota looks to finish this once and for all, getting Kyoko up top and looking to hit the Cyclone from there. Kyoko's able to escape, but gets booted down. Toyota instead looks for it in the centre of the ring, but Kyoko escapes again, hits a huge German, and suddenly, well, the moment could be at hand. She's up immediately, snapping into a third Niagara driver, but shockingly the shoulders up. However, Kyoko will not hesitate. She picks up a seemingly lifeless Toyota, and even though she at first slumps off the shoulders, she picks her back up again, seemingly for another Niagara, but now she drapes her over her back and... oh man. The Victoria Driver. The new move. And the one that finally wins Kyoko Inoue the red belt at 24 minutes 52. The creation of a quite legendary super finisher and the crowning of a new ace. A tearful Kyoko Inoue is presented with the title and the trophy, also having a respectful exchange with the now former champion. It's a huge moment, the cap of a particularly wonderful couple of years for Kyoko Inoue. She's been gunning for the top spot for so long, and at last she's there. And unsurprisingly, it came after another great match. It's a very logical end to the story. Kyoko Inoue needed something new, something that was befitting of an ace, in order to finally take Manami Toyota down, and she found it in the shape of the Victoria Driver. The move that would, of course, become even more famous later on as Kenta Kobashi's Burning Hammer, a move that's a little different in setup and impact, but certainly takes plenty from Kyoko's driver. As with damn near every match here, it's one to watch. While on the whole the May 1995 Korakuen Hall draw is the most famous Inoue Toyota match and undoubtedly the best one, it is very much worth it to go through the whole story, finishing with the win that finally secures Kyoko Inoue's position as the new top ace of Zenjo. She'll be the one leading the company into 1997, even as the waters look ever choppier behind the scenes. Because of course the story doesn't end here. This was initially all about the red belt, the progression from Kong to Toyota, Toyota to Kong, Kong to Kansai, Kansai to Toyota, Toyota to Kyoko. We may have reached that last stop, but the train isn't slowing down. This is now about All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling as a whole. We've discussed business plenty over the course of this series, the sense that forces are building up to something pretty bad. Well now, they are pretty close to erupting. The Dark Ages will now begin. First off, let's take a quick look at what Kyoko Inoue did as champion. I should stress again, before we get into the huge problems, that the in-ring action is still very much quality. You can look at damn near any Kyoko Inoue match, or indeed most any AJW match really, from 1997 without any context, have a good time watching it, and think that everything must be all gravy. The standard has not dropped. It's just everything else that's the trouble. Anyway, Zenjo went even bigger than normal when it came to positioning Kyoko as the ace. Her first title defense was, in actual fact, a unification match, one where the IWA and All Pacific singles titles are on the line, and the winner would essentially hold Zenjo's own Triple Crown. Oh, and the holder of those other two titles just so happens to be Kyoko's tag partner. Takako Inoue won both the IWA and All Pacific titles from Reggie Bennett on 21st of November 96, and now that Kyoko's the champ? Well, it's kinda natural that the two tag partners end up clashing, and while they may be partners, and indeed friends, Takako's the last person who you would expect to give any quarter. The match is typically great, two wrestlers who know each other inside out going at it, Takako at times coming pretty damn close to the victory. But of course, it's not a big surprise that Kyoko is the one who wins it, doing so after 3 straight Niagara drivers. Nothing quite says ace like holding all 3 of the main Zenjo singles titles, after all. Kyoko's next defense comes at Wrestling Queendom in March against Aja Kong. Again, it's hardly something for me to tell you that this match is one to watch. It's Kyoko and Aja going at it for nearly 30 minutes after all, with Kyoko once again triumphing over the Jungle Emperor. The problems at Zenjo are really becoming clear by this point, however. While initially the attendance for the year's Queendom was announced at 8,300, it was actually closer to 5,000, and this is still at the 17,000-seater Yokohama Arena. I mentioned way back in the beginning that the 9,000 AJW drew for the 1995 Queendom was considered a major disappointment. Well, this is closer to a major disaster. The attendances are really sinking and the financial problems are becoming common knowledge. While initially they start 1997 by giving top stars more days off in order to save some costs, this soon changes when attendances crater yet further for all the house shows, with a pledge that every star will be on every show. Oh, and Zenjo are still running hundreds of shows. They're still out there near enough every night, sometimes 2 shows a day, even though a significant chunk of the house shows don't even break 1,000, and they even fail at times to fill half of the Korakuen Hall. Indeed, the newer Joshi promotions, Gaia and JD, are now beginning to outdraw AJW in certain venues. You may think that Zenjo should run less shows, but they don't know how to do that. They've ran this sort of schedule since the heyday of the Crush Gals, and they can't stop it. All the troubles aside, a new challenger is very much being prepped for Kyoko Inoue. Kaoru Ito gets a significant singles push in 1997, drawing with Aja Kong in January and defeating Manami Toyota at Queendom to earn a title shot. When Kyoko and Ito go at it on May the 11th in Nagoya in front of a billed 4,750 people, that number alone would be significantly down from previous shows at the Aichi Prefectural Gymnasium, but the truth in attendance is probably half that number. They go all the way to a 60-minute draw, and after the match Kyoko decides to return her title belts, saying that a true world champion should always pin her challenger. This does 2 things. Of course, it sets up intrigue for a rematch that happens in Sapporo in June where Kyoko Inoue ends up winning, but it also signals an end to the rather brief Zenjo Triple Crown experiment. Only the red belt is on the line in the Inoue-Ito rematch. Clearly those other titles, the IWA and All Pacific straps, are needed elsewhere, around other people's waists. The 2 shows that AJW run in Sapporo, where the fate of all these singles titles are decided, on June 17th and 18th, are once again poorly attended, and the shows don't really have the atmosphere of years past. The faithful are here, but it's hard to find much optimism about the state of Zenjo. When reading recaps of the company's performance, old observers and the like, it's pretty clear that AJW are trying anything to see just what on earth can stick. They decide to up the healing as well as the blood on the cards, with the main architects of violence being a resurgent and even more sadistic Las Cachorras Orientales. Etsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda don't care who they tear apart, even losing the odd match by disqualification, something that almost never happens in AJW. From a quality standpoint, this is LCO entering their greatest period. Still, it doesn't as yet move the needle in AJW. And from there we get to the really major signifier of trouble. Suddenly, people are leaving. Toshio Yamada, a long-time stalwart, finds herself in the position of either retiring or going elsewhere, and AJW are happy to just let it happen, still rather arrogantly thinking that a 27-year-old who is basically a mid-carder at this stage can't have much to offer. And so, she decides to go elsewhere. She jumps ship to Gaio in July. Zenjo may not think that to be a significant blow, but the next one sure is. On the 14th of July, Aja Kong announces her intention to leave All Japan Women, and it's pretty clear that her departure is not a retirement, as she wishes to work against the stars of Gaia and JD. As a matter of fact, her plans end up going far beyond that. While initially Aja's plan is to be a freelancer, she is soon approached by Rossi Agawa, who's also going to be leaving AJW with the intention of starting a new promotion, that ending up being ASEAN. Kon would be the founder, and Agawa would be its president. Mariko Yoshida, at this stage someone who has never quite made main event level after repeated major injuries, will also be along for the ride, and ex-Joshi Saki Hasegawa will be working the office as manager. This new promotion will debut at the start of the new year. Meanwhile, Aja continues to work AJW commitments until September. With yet more new promotions forming, I think you know what's coming. It's time for an exodus. There are a lot of other details to look at, things that go beyond the pages of old observers. But for now we go to a specific show, August 20th's Brightness at the Nippon Budokan. It's another pretty miserable night attendance-wise. AJW announced 9,100, but the reality is that around 6,000 people were at the hall. It is perhaps important to also place the show in a context that it was just a few days after the shocking Plum Mariko tragedy, and you wondered how that also might have affected wrestlers' mindsets. But yeah, this is the night where everything came to a head. As far as the wrestling goes, we do have something significant, the last major chapter in the rivalry between Aja Kong and Manami Toyota. As ever, the action is sensational. The pair run through all the hits and then some, the beats that sent them into the stratosphere over the past few years, that make them perhaps the greatest pairing in the history of Joshi, and in the end, they can't beat one another. The match ends in a 30-minute draw, and it's an emotional finale to Kong's AJW singles career. Still, this meeting isn't what people were talking about. They were more talking about what happened at the start of the show. Kyoko Inoue, in an unplanned move, announced to the crowd that she was going to leave the promotion. This was a pretty big shock, not exactly the long goodbye that Aja had. Oh, and Kyoko was still the red belt champion. This move kind of removing any doubt from the result of the match she has later on against Yumiko Hotta for the title, in which Hotta finally managed to win the big strap. The move obviously created a fair bit of tumult in the back, but as we'll see, while it hadn't been announced yet, it was already well known by this stage that Rossi Agawa and Aja Kong were looking to form a new promotion, and Kyoko Inoue wasn't leaving to be a part of that setup. As a matter of fact, she didn't have too much of a plan at all at this point, but she knew that the time was right. The exodus gets worse in September. Etsuko Mita, Mima Shimoda, Chapurito Asari, Mariko Yoshida, Saya Endo, Yukashina, Rie Tamada, and Yumi Fukawa all announced their departure. Yoshida, Tamada, and Fukawa will be joining Kong at ASEAN. Junior wrestlers Misei Genki, Yoshiko Tamura, and Tanny Mouse also leave, and it's reported that they're leaving because they're frustrated over not getting paid. In The Observer, it's reported that the wages for these juniors are months behind. In actual fact, the situation was a lot worse than that. And here we must go to the interviews with the main players, the ones conducted by Bull Nakano on her YouTube channel. It's obviously bad news if the juniors aren't getting paid, although it's hardly surprising considering Zenjo's management. But what if the champion isn't getting paid? The ace of the company, the person who the whole booking is built around? Well, that's what happened. Kyoko Inoue says in her interview with Bull that she often had complaints from the juniors about not getting paid. Eventually she checked her own accounts and realised that Zenjo hadn't paid her in 5 months. When she questioned the office about this, they say that she never came to pick the money up and, well, it's not there anymore because AJW is completely broke. They don't have the money to pay anybody. The only time a wrestler really gets paid at this point is if a venue that AJW's won in a showing pays specifically for their booking. It's through this that we still see the odd appearances from the folks who leave, including Kyoko herself, in the months after this exodus. But venues are only going to pay specifically for the major stars, certainly not the juniors, who are living hand to mouth, splitting cash amongst themselves. And so Kyoko makes the decision to leave, and indeed to form her own company, thinking specifically that the juniors, well, they need to be paid. It becomes clear that she's not invited to the ASEAN setup. Wrestlers like her aren't the sort that Ross Yagawa is interested in. In her words, Ross is only interested in taking the pretty girls. Kyoko's promotion was announced by the end of 1997, and it's called Neo Ladies. Tani, Genki and Tamura, the aforementioned departed juniors, join Kyoko in the new promotion alongside Mita, Shimoda, Asari, Endo and Yukashina. What then of the wrestlers who actually stay in All Japan Women? There are certainly a few who do, despite everything. Yumiko Hotta, Manami Toyota, Kaoru Ito, Tomoko Watanabe, Takako Inoue, Kumiko Meikawa, as well as juniors Momo Nakanishi and Nane Takahashi, all publicly declare their loyalty to AJW in September, promising that they will rebuild the company. Toyota, in her interview with Ball, said that while she did initially have plans to retire at the age of 25, she mainly stayed on at Zenjo because she wanted to properly pass the torch on to the next generation. And yet, things are a phenomenal mess. It's reported that the Matsunaga brothers' debt is in the region of over 2.5 billion yen. In 1997, that amounted to 22 million in US dollars. It's quite clear by this stage what has to happen. In October, AJW files for bankruptcy. All of the Matsunaga's many real estate holdings, basically the main cause of this debt, are sold or taken, including the big AJW complex, and some big shows were cancelled. Zenjo did intend to run Sumo Hall again at the end of 97, but the show was dropped due to lack of interest. Now, this bankruptcy does not mean the immediate end of Zenjo. AJW would continue to run, but in a much smaller form. It is at this stage that what we call the Dark Ages of Joshi do begin in the eyes of some people, including myself. The Dark Ages has nothing to do with in-ring quality. There's damn good stuff in all promotions. But the scene is fragmented, blown apart, and the commercial days are over. Joshi is basically part of the indie scene. Some promotions tend to stick together more than others, particularly the now old guard of AJW, JWP and LLPW, although pretty much all the promotions do often end up working together as the years go by, especially seeing as pretty much everyone is freelance now. Gaia, ASEAN, Neo and JD have to work with the older promotions, and the older promotions have to work with them. Gaia is now the biggest promotion in Joshi, filled with established stars such as Chigusa Nagayo, Akira Hokuto, and Toshio Yamada, not to mention making big names of their own like Miko Satomura and Kaoru, but it's not near any kind of level that Zenjo was at its peak. It should be noted, by the way, that some Dark Ages wrestlers do have positive things to say about the post-bankruptcy Zenjo. Kaio Numi, a junior who initially had a very tough time fitting in at AJW, to the point where she quit no less than 5 times in the mid-90s due to the bullying, pressure and punishments, said in her Bull interview that generally the crew got on a lot better after 1997, with there being less bullying and less of the traditional hierarchy where juniors wouldn't say boo to a goose and would rarely even say a word to the seniors. After 1997, the crew hung out together a lot more. Also, despite everything, AJW still has a slot on Fuji TV, where they've basically always been. Only now they're part of a block of women's combat sport programming called Fighting Goddess Athena, and there's 1 episode a month. If you ever see someone refer to post-bankruptcy Zenjo as the Athena years, that's what they're referring to. Now, while there is a lot more to say in the future about Joshi's Dark Ages, a long and grey period that lasted an awful lot longer than a decade, it certainly is a time that's worth examining when it comes to the in-ring action. After all, it's filled with people who, in previous generations, would have been absolute stars. And yet there is still an air of depression about a lot of it. After all, most of the promotions I've mentioned are long gone, all folding as Pro-Res contracted further. Neo Ladies, Arcean, JD, Gaia, and ultimately, in April of 2005, All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling closed after 37 years in the business. The tales of their endings are varied. Aja Kong and Rossi Ogawa's partnership blew up over directional disagreements in 2001, with Aja leaving Arcean and then suing Rossi for continuing to advertise her. Eventually, the promotion was taken over by Yumiko Hotta in 2003 and renamed A to Z, and it ultimately closed in 2006. JD and Neo both struggled to get a significant foothold, and in the end they both simply ran out of money and talent, closing in 2007 and 2010 respectively. It's long been thought, if not completely confirmed by everybody, that the main reason why Aja Kong and Kyoko Inoue are both still working today is largely due to the debts they incurred through running their promotions. Indeed, Kyoko freely said to Bull in her interview that running Neo cost her all her previous earnings and then some, and that she was still paying off debts from it. Gaia, as the top Joshi promotion, actually could have potentially continued beyond 2005. However, Chigusa Nagaya was thinking a lot about retirement, seeing as most of her peers had already hung up her boots, and she made the decision to close Gaia, with the last show happening on April the 10th. As it happens, this was only a week before what would be AJW's final show on April the 17th, 2005. The Matsunagas never came close to clearing the huge debt from their real estate business. Indeed, that only ever got bigger through interest, with AJW stars just paid hand to mouth. No guaranteed contracts, just the crew splitting up the cash at the end of each night. Eventually, the pressure from the tax officers and, how you say, other forces the brothers were indebted to became too much to deal with, and AJW had to shut up shop. Tragically, one of the Matsunagas, Kunimatsu, also known as referee Jimmy Kayama, took his own life months after Zenjo's closure, in the hope that his debt would die with him and that his family wouldn't be ruined. All of the other Matsunaga brothers, Takashi, Kenji, Toshikuni, and the unknown eldest brother, the one who was never involved with the business, have since passed away due to illness and old age. With the end of all of these promotions, the Joshi landscape was even smaller. JWP and LLPW are now the elder promotions, JWP eventually closing in 2017, and LLPW actually still going today, still featuring the likes of Shinobu Kandori and Takako Inoue, who joined LLPW properly in 2005, and has pretty much been joined at the hip with Kandori since then. Other setups, including Mayumi Yazaki's Oz Academy, founded in 1998, were also hanging around, and other new promotions started. Miko Satomura starts Sendai Girls in 2005, Emi Sakura's Ice Ribbon in 2006, Wave, formed from the ashes of JD in 2007, Kyoko Inoue starts Diana in 2010, and 2010 is also when World Wonder Ring Stardom is founded. The action was out there, although it's even more fragmented and exceptionally tough for fans to follow. If you were a fan of Joshi, these were terrible times, and the relative success that Joshi enjoys nowadays may well be a great relief. Even if for those who were fans at these more troubled times, there's always going to be the fear that it could all just blow up again one day. On the other side of things, the show still goes on, even as the trouble brews, and that's been a big part of what this series is all about. We've seen so many incredible matches from a time back in the mid-90s when Joshi was still getting a lot of hype and attention, particularly from Western fans who found it and loved it, just as they did any other form of pro-res. We didn't think too much about the state of the business, never quite armchair analysing it the same way you'd analyse something like WWF or whatever. We didn't know much about that. We just knew it was damn good, and even when you do know the backstories, the tough tales, the business woes and so on, if anything it just helps with understanding it all, beyond simply enjoying the cool moves in front of you. That character just makes the work of the likes of Manami Toyota, Kyoko Inoue, Aja Kong, Takako Inoue, Mima Shimoda, Dynamite Kansai, and all the other amazing wrestlers we've seen even better. And so, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, hopefully you've enjoyed this AJW Red Belt series, and until the next time, bye for now.